question and nobody feels like they didn't get their turn.
I agree.
Also, if you can actively listen and try to hear what other people are saying, because they might be asking something similar that you're going to ask, and that'll cut back in some of the questions, hopefully. And mostly just, being mindful of when somebody is speaking, just waiting your turn, and knowing that I'll make eye contact and I've seen you and I will get to your question. Okay, so those are a few good ones. Does anybody have another guideline that they would like to propose to the group? Okay, great. So what we're going to do today, I'm just going to quickly talk about this agenda, and then I'm going to hand it over for Brian to go through an overview. The agenda, essentially, I just want to make sure that everyone's clear about the first hour and a half. So I'm speaking to just the 1:30 to 3 portion of this meeting. We're going to be going through this weighting exercise, and then the goal is to reach general consensus. So I want to work with you that we have enough time to get to some sort of agreement by 3, so when you go into the 3 o'clock meeting, you'll be voting on it. So that's the general purpose. Once we get through an overview, we'll allow some time for some questions, just clarifying if you don't understand what some of the purpose and activity today is about. We'll get through those questions. And then in a large group, we're going to give you some examples. Brian has some handouts that we'll be giving to everyone. Really good examples to explain just step by step what this looks like when it's been completed. And then we're going to actually do the activity of having people fill out the score sheets, and that's when we'll be circulating helping you. And at that time, as you're done, you'll be turning them in, and Emily and Brian are going to enter those as quickly as possible, so you'll see real time what the results are. We'll discuss the results, and then the goal is to get to general agreement about what the group has recommended, so that way we can wrap up by 3. So at the very end, we can save time for clarifying questions and or make any changes if we need to. Okay? Anything for me before I hand it over? All right. So we'll go ahead and do this overview. Brian, you want to talk about that?
Thank you, Angie.
Yep.
I'm Brian Vituli with PPACG's Transportation Program, and thank you for coming in earlier than your normal time for this, but this is very important. This is when you really get a chance to put a mark on what you think are the important parts of our evaluation criteria and how it fits into our evaluation and prioritization of transportation projects in the region. So we talked a little bit about this last month. Over the last several months, actually since late last summer, we've been developing goals and performance measures and objectives and targets and evaluation criteria, and those last 2 items just were adopted by the board last month. So right now what we need to do is weight those evaluation criteria and to apply an importance to them. So it'll help us in determining the community's perspective of the evaluation criteria. Earlier this month, the Transportation Advisory Committee did the same thing, and once you're done doing what you're going to do today and recommending during your regular meeting, this will be presented to the board next month, and the board will do one of several things. Either what we'll present to the board will be the tax evaluation criteria weightings and what you all come up with today. In the past, the board has done several things. They've either selected one group's weighting over another's, or they've last time they averaged the weights. So what we'll do is we'll present them with all the material, and then they will do what they do, either one of those 2 options, or they may come up with their own. But this is part of the process, and like I said, this is where you really get to put your mark on what you feel is important. So what I'm going to do, just have a few handouts for you before we get started. Sure, thank you.
Sure.
These are the blank evaluation criteria weighting worksheets that you'll be filling out in a little bit.
Brian, just a clarification point, if I may. Is this just, will the results of this today be our actual weightings that you will use to input, or is this just a workshop to explain us how to do it?
This is a workshop for you to actually do the weighting.
Okay.
So we have an hour and a half to get through all of this, and as Angie said, staff will be roaming around to help you all do that. And then, so we're as Angie said also, we're going to just get general consensus from you during this workshop, and then come item 11 of your regular meeting, that's when you'll do the actual recommendation of the weighting values.
Thank you.
Sure. So just a little bit of background. The weighting, once we come up with weighting from you all and from the CAC, and depending on what the board does next month with the weighting, those weighting values will then be part of a calculation that will be used in conjunction with the scores when staff does the scoring of all the member governments applications. We'll apply these combined weighted scores to the project scores, and that will help us determine a ranking of all the projects and a prioritization of the projects. And so we'll just go down the list of the highest scored projects, and depending on what funding category applies to that project, we go down the list using the best guess of amount of funding that we have. So we go down until we run out of money, basically. And they're the projects that go into our, what we call our fiscally constrained project list. And that's the list of projects that we can assume we can fund over the next 25 years out to 2040. So that's where the weighting comes in. And what I passed out to you, you should have a blank worksheet. You'll have a sample worksheet from Alicia and a sample worksheet from Joe. And these are just a couple examples before we get into the scoring to help kind of eliminate the confusion that sometimes goes along with the value that you apply as far as weighting and then how you rank them. So if you look at Alicia's score sheet or her worksheet, she thinks that maintenance, goal number 1, is the most important. And she also thinks that criteria 2 through 5 are important in that order, but that they should all be given the same weight. So you'll see that the left column is the ranking column, and the right column is the weighting column. So that's one way. If you look at Joe's worksheet, Joe thinks that air quality is the most important. And if you can remember, the most important rank is 13. We have 13 evaluation criteria. The most important is 13. Least important is 1. But he also thinks that stormwater is a close second, and everything else is not that important. So you can see the weighting values that he applies to those two, 45 for air quality and 44 for stormwater, and then he gave everything else a 1. For the weighting, you have to apply at least a 1. You can't have a 0. So those are just two ways to do it, and it's just important to remember, all the weighting values out of those 13 criteria, all the weighting values have to add up to 100. Yes.
Is it safe to say that if someone were to put a 13 as the most important, it would be illogical to have a 1 as far as the weight?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Just so
Good
everyone
point.
understands.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
And then the rankings, you just basically rank them 13, the most important, all the way down to 1, the least important.
No ties allowed.
No ties. Not for the ranking. So that's where we are. We can answer a few questions if you have. Angie, I think this is the point where we just try to go into filling out the score sheets and working toward that.
And one quick thing, with the weighting part of it, what a proportional it should be proportional to how much more important you think something is. So if something is twice as important as something else, you give something a 1 point as not important. Then if you give it 2 points, you're saying it's twice as important as that. If you give it 4 points, the 4 points is twice as important as the 2 and 4 times more important than the 1. So it should be that sort of proportional weighting. So in the case of, I think it was Joe, stormwater is 44 times more important than safety to Joe on this one. So just try to keep that in mind, that it should, the weight should be proportional to how much more important you think something is. So.
Harold, go ahead.
Before we get into actually working on this, can we talk about the process just for another minute or two?
Yeah, so let's start with process questions, and then we'll talk about the way that we might score these.
Okay. It's my understanding that the CAC is going to do one of these. TAC has already done one. What happens then?
That's what I was saying. We'll present these to the board next month.
As
and-
two separate,
As two separate recommendations, yep. And then the board will either pick one committees over the others, they could average them, or they could just choose their own.
At the last time, there was such a difference between the TAC and CAC that the last process, the board said, we really can't resolve this. Why don't we go out to the public and do a poll of the public to see? So we did a statistically significant poll for gender, age, income, and geography, and polled people as to what was important, and it confused the issue even more.
I recall that
There's
discussion.
about 8 different publics out there, and every goal got rated and weighted most important, and every goal got weighted and rated least important. When you average those all together, they get sort of consumed. And so the board sort of last time put their hands and said, why don't we just take the 3 different scores we have now, CAC, TAC, and the poll, average those all together. And that's what we did.
Didn't they s-
And got sort of got smushed into that.
Didn't they send us back to the drawing board one year and said,
That was
you guys,
two plans ago.
yeah, 2 plans ago, I just said, you guys are way too far apart, go back and do this again.
And so we had a joint meeting between TAC and CAC. And what it comes down to is the TAC, in general, they have been through this process. They know what their projects are going to score well on. And they tend to give more, and they're also pretty much all engineers, they tend to give more weight to things that their projects are going to do well on, and less weight to things that projects aren't going to do well on. And they're all engineers.
And they belong to the municipalities who submitted the projects.
Exactly.
Well, and in fact, those of us that have gone through this know that Joe has an agenda, and that's one way of ensuring you get more weight on your specific.
You know what? Yeah,
Priorities.
I'm guessing Joe's projects are great for air quality and water quality.
The second question on that is the last little table is confusing as to how you meld two very different outcomes.
So you're looking in the memo that was sent.
Are we going to have to worry about that at our level?
Actually, we have Excel
Good.
set up to do that automatically.
That's good.
But when I first proposed this 4 plans ago now, the TAC wanted to see how it all worked, so I had to put this memo together so they could understand, well, what do we do?
Everything else made sense. That last one was like,
Yeah, and it happens out of Excel now. So
I think I forgot my differential equation. Okay, thank you.
Questions? Okay, Bob.
I have a question about goal number 6, and it's redundancy and resiliency. Could you, from your perspective, talk to me about resiliency?
It's how quickly a road can recover from a disaster after something happens to it. Whether it's a crash, how quickly you can clear the crash. If it's a bridge erosion, how quickly you can get something back in place there on that same road. Redundancy is obviously going to different roads, but a resiliency is that road is back functioning. Whether you put traffic over on the shoulder and, if the main line's, something's wrong with the main line, you can move it over on the shoulder and it can still function. So resiliency is on the road recovery, and redundancy is, a parallel route sort of.
So Highway 24,
There is no redundant really route, or the routes.
but the resiliency, is the money being spent to put the huge culverts
That's
under
exactly
that
what it's
road?
for,
It is
to make it more resilient. Yep.
regarding resilience.
Yes.
Or another example would another example of resiliency be widening the shoulder so that you can get stuff out of the lane of traffic?
Exactly.
That would be an example
Yep.
of resiliency. Okay.
Yeah. Another resiliency that's really not road specific is to have tow trucks standing by, or to have equipment standing by, like they did on 24, where it was so if something happened, they already had the equipment deployed. So that's to increase the resiliency. So,
Thank you.
I'm Jim. No, he's Al. I'm Jim. I'm new, so I apologize if I'm asking questions that have been clarified before. Thank you, Bob. You took care of one for me. As I was going through this, number 8 talks about adverse impact, and adverse impact is suggested or implied in several of the other criteria as being, for example, in wildlife habitat, adverse impact is sort of implied negatively, because that talks about how you would score it if it has no impact or has a positive impact. But if it has an adverse impact, how do we distinguish those kinds of things? Is there a definition that you have in mind for adverse impact?
I think what we're planning on doing for this one is looking at, as far as social impacts, using a noise analysis as a proxy,
Okay.
and to see how much it's going to change noise with the set of projects with, or that project, how much impact that will change on noise. Because other things, like you get into some really squishy sort of, well, it's one person's benefits and another person's adverse impacts. But noise is something that people can say, yeah, I'd rather have not live near a lot of traffic noise.
You're reminding me, I had the pleasure to sit through some board meetings where they showed all the criteria. So, thank you.
Any other questions about process or any other questions about the criteria? Okay. Does everybody understand how to both weight them and rank them?
And you say it might be easiest if everybody, you went through and just ranked most important, 13, most important down to 1, and start with that. And like I said, no ties allowed, so you have to come to, there are going to be some that are going to be close. You have to decide, and then I think go to the weighting after that. In general, I found more success that way.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start filling out your score sheet. I think that's a great recommendation. So starting with the rank, with the most important.
Most important is 13 again. I just want to, I'm going to overemphasize it. Most important is 13, least important is 1.
Yeah, we did it backwards.
We did that backwards.
Yeah, we did.
So when I first looked at Joe's, I'm like,
We all know
this
that
is
calculator
out. This is 45. Wait, when is this least important?
Yeah, so that's also written at the top of the sheet in case you need to
That's
answer the top.
assuming we read the directions.
So go ahead and start filling this out. Maybe if you have a pencil, maybe start with that because you might want to move things around. We're going to give you some time and make sure everyone is done. If you have a question while you're doing this, maybe ask your neighbor, because I think most of you are sitting next to someone who's done this before. Or raise your hand, and one of us will come around and help answer your question. Okay, when you're finished, you don't have to wait for everyone. Just start handing them in to Brian, and then we'll start entering them in and go back through more questions once we see the results. Okay,
Hand them in with both rank and weight.
yes.
Okay.
No blanks allowed.
No blanks allowed. 13 and
Yeah.
Michelle, I'm Al. Nice to meet
And
you.
Al, 10.
You're
We need those stinking erasers.
I'm new. I'm the other new.
very good.
Excellent.
You want our names on the sheets?
Well, that's the way we did it with the
put
TAC.
your
If you
name
could
on
put your
mine.
names on the sheet.
Yeah,
we
just
have
makes it
columns.
Your name on
easier.
mine.
I could see names being good, that if somebody turned it in incomplete, we'll be able to know who we have to go ask a question to.
I'm just putting your name
It is
on
a
mine.
test.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we don't need that. Sorry.
Do we turn in Joe and Alicia?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was just telling you all this. So if you have a PowerPoint and you do presenter's notes, it has to show up on a
Well,
screen.
no,
So I
does
assume that's what this is for. I
infill
have no idea why
redevelopment.
the settings like this though.
Yeah, it's
10.
backwards.
But you can see the mouse moving around, so then you can.
It had very little
Where
development.
did it go?
Certain projects that were infilling rather than sprawling out to different districts.
Well,
Looking
yeah,
at
that's
trying to
fine.
infill
I just am confused because the mouse goes away.
closer in.
Okay, areas that are either failing economically.
Yes.
Or, okay, or,
In South Academy, that whole area
Right.
along South Academy.
Yep.
That's pretty much makes up.
Okay.
I don't have a problem, but it's
Basically reutilization
Yes,
of existing
one and
areas,
two.
as opposed to
Repurposing.
repurposing,
Yeah,
as opposed to
repurposing, yeah.
sprawling, like you said.
You know, the city
Where's
has moved
personalized
last
there?
several years more to rather than sprawl, trying to concentrate more in areas where public transportation would be effective.
Right, we've already got infrastructure between the
Yes.
roads and
anybody
existing,
need a
along existing
pencil?
routes for.
Exactly.
I've got pencil.
So this is,
Thank you.
Current time.
I'll need two
you.
erasers.
You just bring the whole eraser, this whole thing.
third.
One more pencil.
And I've gone in and deleted and done.
None of these are unimportant.
It's true. You just got to decide in your mind which ones are more.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's easier to go from high to low.
I'm having a spaz with the mouse.
Oh no.
There you go.
This doesn't make me nervous at all.
Why?
Okay.
As a person who has more than one monitor.
Yeah, you would know.
Yes.
Okay, let's see if we have everybody.
Do you?
Oh, sure.
No backwards. So, one
Wait.
big one and then two others. I want
Are
to try
these
to
just
two others.
backwards?
Or maybe the middle.
Should we just do it backwards?
Yeah, just,
No, I just, oh, okay.
when I can do print screen. Oh.
Does need transportation planning music?
We do need transportation planning music.
There's like 3 songs. It's that terrible paper over parking lot song.
That's right, yeah.
And
What's the
the
Beatles song?
Weeds theme song, The Little Houses.
Yeah, so, and you want to use other way to sit and fill out.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, so we're just going to switch those then. That's fine.
So.
Because I'm still in,
Wait.
yeah.
15, 20, 10, 10, 6,
There were 3 10s, right?
yep. 5, 2, 10.
Helter Skelter, that's it. Helter Skelter. That'd be a great song.
Yes. Right.
Please don't do that right now.
13, 10, 9, 7, 8, 5, 6,
The rule is no ties on the waiting.
1, 3.
Oh, the waiting can be tied.
It adds up.
Waiting can be tied.
The waiting, the rank.
Just ranking.
Just need to put this.
Oh, got it. Okay, all right.
Anyway.
I did this on this worksheet.
Ta-da. Okay.
So he picked John.
Okay.
And they got the same volume that he had to listen to. In fact, I'm fine.
Hopefully I have everybody in the thing already.
It was 44 minutes of the same song.
This really, in my mind, how do you
Yeah, great, thank you. No, it will be on the computer by then, so, yeah, it'll be good.
You would have saved your one from the last time you did it. Are you saying you've changed your mind?
Yeah, actually, I think I'm not even sure I weighted mine last time. I think I turned it in late, and I wasn't sure if I weighted it, which is sad for me, but I should have. I can't add to 100. Once you get out of tens and zeros, I can't add to 100 very quickly, so I have to.
It's 7.6 if you wanted to weight them equally, just to keep that in your mind. So that's going to be your sort of average in my head, just so I can
Yeah,
so I can know I can go, is that going to be above average or below average? And it's like you said, if you put 10 too many times, you're done. Kind of thing. You get to 100 quickly.
yeah, I know.
So it's not an easy thing, but I feel like we're being redundant by ranking them and then giving a percentage. Is that
Well,
not redundant?
you might be a little, but when you rank them 13 to 1, 13, 12, 11, 10, and 9, they are probably going to have a higher percentage of the total 100% than,
So why not just do the percentage and leave off the 1 through 13?
there's a reason for that.
They
We
must
found
use
that
it
out
for
last
something.
time.
Yeah, there's a reason.
I'm sorry I was late, but I really shouldn't have been here at all. I should be at work. But you know what? I decided this was important. I needed to come.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I'm just making sure it makes sense. Okay. I've done this before. Thank you.
Okay.
Pardon? No, I'm okay, but this is what I did at home, was a forced pairing, and that has helped me get to this part. This part was a little hard.
Give me true accountability. It's like a test, isn't it?
That's all I've been doing all morning anyway, so I've been taking exams. It's just stuff that they throw at you and say, oh, yeah, this now. You have to take the certification. They'll tell you it takes 3 days to get
To do it.
And you're like, oh, my God. They just don't say stuff.
you.
I hope that counts, hope that equals 100.
I'm just pulling out my calculator
It's
to
been a
figure
year,
it
and
out.
20 years in financial management, I still can't add. I get to where I add 5 and 7 on the
I had
calculator
it
instead
for
of
lunch,
just doing
so
it.
I prefer not to.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You're a
Fine.
community representative then.
So I go to open the calculator, the husband calls.
Right, and I wanted to come in.
Okay.
Interesting, yeah, yeah.
Well, we're glad to have that kind of input on the citizens committee.
Process question over my pay grade.
Oh, that's
Third
fine.
option, because of the model that we used and how the calculation takes place, can the third option be to meld them, not average, but melds the two TAC and CAC scores?
It's 12.
And just do a calculation,
Okay, you
third
can't ask
calculation
an
would be held
engineer
out
to
to
give
one
you
side.
numbers like this.
I wanted to sit here just to.
Because it's a function, it's a simple function of plugging in all the rankings, plugging in all of the
Like versus everyone has the same background, we all kind of, and I think contributing or.
I mean, I happen to believe that the principle of aggregator is very perspective and come
Sit
up with
through a lot of
more representative version.
board meetings, just to learn what's going on.
I'm not sure.
I'm not,
Sit.
So are you a consultant on your own, or do you work for a consulting company?
I work for consulting, and I am in the office manager for the Colorado Springs office. So our company is the headquarters in Dallas. And I opened up the Colorado Springs
And what is the company?
CP and the transportation aviation,
I've got my name on it.
environmental. I have my name on water, wastewater treatment, aviation, transit. I mean, we do everything that there is transportation. But I also.
You're welcome.
And I'm really actually that does this.
I did.
Otherwise, I did. I didn't put my last name on it.
Who are you looking for? Oh, no.
No.
Whose turn it is but didn't put their name on it? You, minus, you get a C minus for not putting your name on it.
C minus?
Have to clean
And
the
if you
projector.
failed one of the questions or you added up wrong, then you get an F.
If it totals more than 100,
Well, I added it up and it equaled 154, so I figured I fat fingered my calculator somehow, so I added it in my head instead and got 100. Feel like I'm in school. You're welcome.
I remember taking
Let's get your,
a biology test one time. This was part of the reason I flunked out and got put on academic probation and ended up in the Army. But a bunch of guys, we all stayed up one night and we were taking the little red pills out of some kind of medicine. It kept you alert.
Kept you awake.
You know, kept you awake, and it was like instant recognition. Somebody could start a paragraph and you could just kind of quote it. But when you came down high. I mean, you came down fast. So I had this biology exam. I studied really hard for a two-part exam with a lab and written test. And nobody could start the lab until everybody finished the written or, whatever, or vice versa.
Creeley has spoken so highly of our first.
I was going
Glad he recruited you.
just sitting there not doing anything, and all of a
Are
sudden
you
I started.
representing El Paso?
We've been up all night. I started to say, and I I'm sitting there like this, and somebody goes, and I'm standing up at the counter, the frog in front of me, and I'm going to try to pin what this, figure out.
Relate to
And I'm
that.
sitting there going like that, and I'm leaning against the counter, and this professor comes over and says, you going to answer? And I'm going, I don't know. I did pretty good on the first part and failed the second part in a big way. Man, it was great.
You got it?
I don't know. Day for the final
Make sure
going
that I
on,
don't add up to
and
120.
the ice rink at University of Richmond hardly ever freezes over. It froze over. So word gets out calling everybody early in the morning. They don't talk, they didn't have text and stuff, but it was like, hey, the lake's frozen over, so we all got, a couple of us got shoe polish cans with electrical tape for pucks, and then out the limb off of trees that kind of was our
I actually understand this process.
6 o'clock in the morning, just
Given there may
barely
be a
light.
different set of questions, I'm naive about. What would be
Stupid
the
stuff.
value or the lack of value of taking the aggregates, TAC and CAC scores and just mashing them together to see what?
You really couldn't shape
Have you done that? How is that different from just averaging?
No, you had to go break them out. It was wintertime, so it broke easy, but you had to go find one, either laying on the ground. You had to go find one where
No,
Here's the
that's,
project list. If you use the CAC weighting, here's the project list. If you use the CAC weighting, here's the average.
shoe polish can.
okay, but the average.
None of us
to
were
me,
skaters,
that's
so
what we're talking
very
about, it's
few
not
of
an
them were.
average, it's an
You're
aggregation.
skating on it. Instead of like this, you're like this, kind of.
Three individual assessments of
Right.
applications of the scoring, and
Tennis shoes
then what
or
the differences are.
Yeah, okay, all right. I'll be quiet now for another 5 minutes.
I think it adds to
We
100.
have done that in the past.
Struggling students are
I'm just,
using.
I'm trying to put myself in a board
Instead of that,
situation
do you
and
think
try to
they're
figure
using
out.
like Red Bull,
If there's,
You do a lot of Red Bull.
Monster?
There was something I read in the paper just recently where there was an increased take of
no, it's one I'd keep in my hip pocket.
the drug they were using.
It's not that hard for us to do it after. The hard part is actually score the projects. After we get a project score, we can apply weighting and all kinds of things.
It's scoring it.
An article in
The real challenge is
No kidding.
just
No
recently
kidding.
about
That's all professional.
they go,
said
oh,
what
I didn't know
students
that's
were
what my,
taking to try to stay
what my
awake in the morning.
ranking would result in.
The scoring must be tough.
But I remember this stuff.
What is the safety
You
implication?
could read something, and it was like instant recognition.
Is apply the regional average.
You could read a chapter of a book, and somebody could just start on the second page. Start paragraph. But it was a short half-life.
You didn't. Sometimes it's down.
retention.
So you don't know. Yeah.
No. Well, you may have some of it if you read it more than once or twice, but if you really studied it, that's different. Just reading it for the first time, it was really a dumb idea.
Could you have adverse impacts by making a road and then taking away parking?
Yes.
That's be an adverse impact.
On the flip side, it's like Colorado Avenue, going from a 5-lane section to a 3-lane section and adding non-motorized.
Becky was telling me about a guy that came to see her recently. Before she changed jobs.
Slow down.
She worked
There's slower rate, more fuel consumption, et cetera, et cetera.
She was one of the trained healthcare guys.
Not easy. That's why they pay you the big bucks.
Colorado.
You know
She
that,
had a
don't you?
guy that worked for Goodwill Industries in her office, and
The second Tuesday.
he was a full-time employee, 30 hours.
Fine, much better, much better.
And
I think one of the reasons this is easier than it was the first time I did it is because most people have smartphones that have calculators on them. The first time I did it here 10 years ago, nobody had smartphones, nobody had calculators. And it's like, okay, we're sharing 3 calculators.
and he was in here trying to
I
get
remember that, I
healthcare.
did have a calculator, you just come on board.
Becky had spent a day down there with
10 years.
HR director,
Congratulations.
informational classes for them. So she was fresh
You
and
look
well.
resilient for the next 10 years.
And so now I'm in actually in physical therapy because it was so I couldn't bend in, I couldn't hold my sides. And the physical therapist would
Sit you down and orient
That's what Becky was telling me, and he left skeptical, but he didn't come, she doesn't recall coming back, so.
Health insurance,
Weather was perfect.
I left, we were still
It was
paying
overcast, and it should be overcast. So
85%.
we went to visit Kate.
Full-time
We
employees,
went there on a Saturday, and we had
not the
pizza.
family, but I mean,
Right,
2
yeah.
days later, we reported
I don't know what it is now. 5 years makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah, well, you know, now what people are doing too is, I've known several companies that they're readjusting, if not eliminating coverage for family members. Either downsizing the whole thing, where you pay a larger percentage for yourself and everyone, or you cut out a spouse or something like that, trying to cut their cost on the whole thing.
his family was done in Mr.
One thing that she got so frustrated doing that job, because she said that
Wendy had
there's nothing affordable about healthcare. But she said it's so frustrating to people because the way I see it, the shell game, people didn't want to be on Medicare. It's got a stigma to it. They had couples that would sit there and say, we're getting a divorce, you make too much money. And we might as well just get a divorce and be.
Yes, would have been a hockey player in
Than be married too much money. I get Medicaid.
I took the butt end of the stick.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Going on in her office, you know, and it's like,
In an old man's way, you had to be over 30. But half the people who were playing were, well, not half, but a couple of people who were playing junior hockey players for Canada.
Take care of 6%.
They could hit a puck so fast, they'd get blind.
and I have seen how they roll in the added cost.
And they were junior hockey.
Medicaid
They had
before,
gone up to the big time.
hospitals ended up eating that.
Hey, look at what I had.
Oh, yes.
All that stuff for indigent care and that kind of thing to some degree.
Well, it became a business
So in
expense.
the one game I was playing,
Have to recoup that
I
by
slashed a guy in front of me.
changing their pricing.
Right, right. So now,
The referee had gone, up with play over the puck.
increased Medicaid.
In the third period, the shifts were lasting maybe 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds. Your legs were so shot. And I was
So
angling to try to get
It's just
back.
making the numbers
Move away
or
across.
total to
I
100,
could
not
see him
more.
coming.
Okay.
I know he didn't mean to. I don't think he meant to.
No, just trying to make sure my weighting, the rank's easy, the weighting for some is easy, and then trying to make sure it just fits what I'm thinking on
very,
it.
very frustrating.
No, I appreciate that.
Now, a good hockey player would have said, let me back out.
doing it before she just, after the open enrollment period.
No, I was crying, which is not acceptable.
There's a certain stage in your
Program
life,
assistant to guide
years after
to,
physical injury.
That's right. That's right.
You want to hop right up and say, I'm good,
I'm
I'm good, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I didn't. They fined him,
what's the website?
which I had no idea where the money went. It certainly didn't.
Anyway, no, not the Connect for Health, the one for the area.
At least you
It's
haven't been
kind of like the
banned.
military one.
Michelle.
That, you know, the guy
Yes.
that owns the
Yeah, Jacqueline said she was
Anyway,
going to
she's,
work on
I
that.
call her,
Thank you.
she's doing a bunch of just program assistant work 20 hours a week for the area agency on agent.
Did they do anything? Did they say
It's a
anything? No,
secret,
it's
secret
underreported.
pact to the owners.
Oh, yeah, it's always been underreported, but he's been like that forever.
That's why they moved, they were able to move so fast. All of the owners.
I don't like what has happened.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And he did. To his 19-year-old girlfriend. If she's 19.
You know, it's going to
What is he going to do?
And what, his wife is suing his girlfriend, or is the girlfriend suing his wife?
just going to be enormous.
I'm so confused. I mean, now that,
To make him sell it, he's only going to clear probably $600 million.
Yeah, he's supporting what they had before.
Pension systems that are upside down. It's just,
Well, the guy, I guess that, I wasn't aware of this,
Money's forever, girls come to.
but the state had a program
Certainly is in the news. You don't know whether it's true or not.
for pre-existing conditions, hospice, that couldn't afford insurance. They had some kind of program that was kind of funded by the state. It was like a
Showed that George Clooney would rather
group
die
policy
than
thing. The payments were really
spend any time with a woman his own age.
so with this advent of Obamacare coming in, they're moving people.
So I was watching a quiz show
program, so the state will save some money.
I wasn't watching, it was just
But I'm not sure exactly how it works.
So they asked this
We've talked about
person-
it a couple times.
I didn't know that Brad Pitt cannot remember.
But I agree with you that the healthcare delivery system, you know,
So what is the disease he's suffering from?
I've been ignorant of some of the problems. And somewhat immune because of my military retirement.
Prosopagnosia.
And
But there's a disease to that.
when we
They've got a
retired,
disease for
I
anything.
hope he remembers it. Like,
3 levels, TRICARE Standard, TRICARE Prime, and then TRICARE
Well,
Prime.
they haven't had a lot of
We
children.
initially
They
went with
have gotten
John,
a lot.
thinking that was a big deal.
I don't think they've had a child. No. They have at least one betwixt them.
You have to get a referral specialist outside your,
I mean, they've adopted half of what?
and you've got to stay within a certain network of doctors.
and a couple from
And,
Africa.
and they.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not local, I mean, they're given homes to people.
And
He should have one.
It's not that they've taken
service wasn't any better than that than I've had for 20 years.
Really. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect there's some
Unlike
staff.
Kate, unlike Kate, the princess of
Whatever.
And it's all on a 15.
William and Kate, you don't think they take care of George?
I will tell you this.
We went with TRICARE Standard, but you don't pay anything.
It's a good looking.
I don't need any referrals.
They did stuff in New
I
Zealand,
haven't paid anything.
Oh, was that right?
and they did stuff in Australia. Yes.
But we found that a lot of doctors, when we
There.
weren't
With
taking
koalas
the
and
TRICARE Prime patients, they were taking
Taking with the koalas.
so payout
Didn't handle it.
would be different under Prime.
But handle
They're
koalas.
fairly nasty too, aren't they?
But
They're doped up most of the time.
Well, they eat eucalyptus.
They're doped up.
Yes,
service
but it's a
coverage
natural
care
doping.
question.
The koalas.
It's not like
the koalas in those-
Colorado marijuana.
That's right. It's like koalas are like Colorado teenagers.
Problems
Or fourth graders, I guess.
psychologists and other folks.
Just
Now, who
when I was
part of the area do you live in? I believe that they would actually get heroin, even if it's a chemical. That wasn't going
All the way up Centennial, where it turns into Woodman, right there next to the Air
Here's the
Force
two parts
Academy,
of the story that I like.
up on the hillside. We had 3 inches of snow this morning. Yeah, we got a bunch of snow.
Not from their parents, but
Started snowing at 10 o'clock last night. It looked like the middle of the winter
Tell
time.
me I added it wrong.
number two is they were selling it for $11 a hit or something. And somebody said, where'd a fourth grader get $11? I don't know. I don't know.
You mostly bounced back.
Yeah,
I've got started.
say so.
Very fortunate.
There's a lot of change going on. People are moving out.
Be healthy after a
Businesses are
20-plus
moving
year
in.
career in the Air Force.
There's going to be more events this summer. It's just unavoidable. It's going to be.
But
If
his,
the weather holds for a while, they'll fix the Williams Canyon.
Correct.
constant.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It all depends on Mother
Big
Nature.
money rolling along and just
They-
nothing left.
The one
Just push the air.
street or the couple of roads that are most heavily affected,
That's Williams Canyon.
yeah,
Canyon
they're,
Avenue.
because some of those, they've basically taken the buildings away.
Just a couple.
Yeah, but the rest of it, they're protected.
30th, I was there.
They're doing major projects they want to get
I
done
was
in
just
60
back there
days.
Thursday night last Friday. I'm buying
Yeah, no, he had,
Just like they did on Highway 24 up above Rainbow Falls.
Exactly.
But
Very well. You know, hindsight's 20/20, but
So I've got to go back on.
having a little tiny culvert and/or no culvert, roll down the side of the highway, was always an indication for trouble.
Yeah, there's a history of floods even before this season.
Sure. Good to see that they're doing what they're doing, but
Yeah.
I left here on Monday morning at
they
6:30.
should have designed that into the 24 when they did it. They knew it had the potential.
Well, I remember back in the 70s, I went to a meeting with civil engineers, Corps of Civil Engineers. I came down to Colorado and had a town meeting. They said there's two areas in Colorado that we're going to have in Phoenix, Ute Pass and Holy County.
Yeah, and guess what?
That's 35 years later, that's where they hit. And they had a plan to alleviate it, and the federal government was going to pay 75% of it. The towns wouldn't come up with their 15 or 20%.
Yeah.
You can overanalyze
Can't
something.
get people
They just did,
to
and they want me to fix my.
stop now and think about the future. Everybody's got a crystal ball.
I wasn't
Well,
overanalyzing.
those are the types of
I was
discussions we
like,
had here. A Cimarron and 25, you know?
Because my
So-
ranking didn't correspond to my ranking.
Your
weighting-
My
money
weighting
aren't
didn't
totally
correspond to my
big and the
ranking.
demand
Your highest
was getting
weighting,
bigger.
your highest weighting wasn't your highest rated project.
Yeah, it's not going to get any
That's
easier
about
in
what
the
they said,
future.
but not quite, but yeah. My middle ones were all jacked up.
See that?
Well, it's interesting, we have some friends who live in Loveland, and they were actually supposed to come down and visit us the weekend of the flood.
Yeah.
13,
They canceled that, and it's a good thing that
11,
they
10,
did.
9.
And then we've got other friends that live,
They should be your highest.
say, south of Fort Carson, maybe.
And they
idea is
are,
the
but
most-
once you get to the middle, my
Right off
numbers
of
just
Cheyenne
skewed because I couldn't,
Cheyenne
I was
Mountain
trying to get
had the
whole
heaviest
numbers
one.
everywhere.
You had something
that
weighted
total event.
higher and you had it ranked.
But because of the
Appear to be frowning a
it's
lot.
not quite as
All
small.
right numbers a little bit.
There were a couple of people, in fact.
That's where the word proportional
Their house got
comes in
flooded.
when he's doing the weighting.
It wasn't destroyed.
You can't have a lower number of priority weighted higher than a higher
The only
weighted
other time I see that is when
Yep.
somebody's about to be laid off.
Yeah, we were fortunate. We didn't get hit like northern Colorado did.
Yep.
It would have just been devastating. It could have just as easily happened down here. You just never know.
Sometimes it's not.
Well, in fact, we were up there because these friends that were supposed to come down, they'd been engaged and never got married. We went up for the wedding. And they got married at a country club golf course that
There's no really perfect right
was on the main flooding path.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, you drive out and it's kind of hard to tell that anything is going on until you see the water lines 8 feet, 10 feet up on the trees.
Yeah.
Calls me and emails.
And this is a very wide stream. I mean, it's like
Council, there must be a right.
it's like Monument Creek down south, really big,
Yeah.
We get the one or two.
and massive amounts of water. Just unbelievable.
Hey, Craig, we are Region 2, right?
Yes, see that region 2.
Something that could take out that much of the
The rest of them
highway
are
that goes
in
up towards
somebody, golly, I'm trying to remember who.
Estes Park and all.
Yeah.
Had to be special.
Yeah.
Noticed that it was kind of impacting me. He said, "Man, where are you looking?"
You originally from the Springs?
Such a
Springs
part-time
area?
job.
Yeah.
Really gets you down.
Well, I'm trying to find out. There's
Colorado Navy.
Very good.
Thanks.
I moved here at 68. Dad was in the Air Force.
Those 10 that are visible.
Back when it was at where the
Visible at
Olympic Center is.
I graduated from high school in
Oh, yeah.
66.
Well, and I graduated WAS at 69.
Oh, okay.
WASA
Bruin, what he was saying.
And our new mayor had.
WASA has moved on.
Yeah, sure has, hasn't it?
It's that one right there. You know, but where was I getting? Because they talked about 5.3%, 5.8%, and I don't see where that. It was,
Most of the time. Most of the time. I got a brand new 10-month-old grandson, first grandchild. So,
okay, and this is,
Actually, 5.8 is
They don't realize.
but what is the 5.3
we love watching
represented?
the little guy.
What is that
He's
saying?
an absolute warrior. We're very fortunate to have close by.
Of the total funds.
Yeah, that's good.
And
So what is that figure?
these numbers are the CDOT regions.
Oh, okay.
These have
We've
to
been here
have,
long enough.
So it's really total funding that we were talking
Boom,
about.
and then kind of go down and come back.
If this
Same
were
with Manitou.
adopted, we would go
Came there,
to
Manitou
8.
was really bustling.
I know, but how many dollars would that
And
be?
it cycled down, and now it's
depends on
for the
what
floods.
the commission does later.
We like that area. We go over there a lot.
They control
Go
all
over
those.
on Friday nights for the art walks and stuff like
So,
that.
Yeah, it's a nice
But it
place.
could be substantial dollars.
yeah, it's between $3 and $5 million a year probably.
Nice feel. We were there for the Mardi Gras
I'll get this back to you.
in the snow. And
Could I?
we had a wonderful time. We really did have a wonderful time.
Silver blazers.
Thanks.
So they keep telling me, you just gotta let that one be and keep working,
Yeah, exactly.
keep working and make everybody else.
So Jason, are you back to civilian life completely?
We're all working.
Yeah. When do you retire from reserve?
Well, between that, Mountain Creek Watershed District and this,
Mine added up to
would trade the
100.
education
I was
for
having second thoughts there. I guess they would have caught it if it
My
hadn't.
perspective has been broadened more in the last 4 months
Oh,
than in all the 40-odd years before.
I had it up to 100 for the last one, too. Isn't that what it says to
That's,
do?
yeah, the ranking is supposed to be, yeah, well, the weighting is supposed to be.
Okay, they must have a calculator
Yeah.
that brings it in.
To explain it.
Yeah.
Take all that such knowledge that fire hoses, all that.
What do you think? Are they deciding if we passed or not? Yeah.
Understand that you just went through a rigorous process.
Travel.
They just trust you.
Say hi.
Hi again. Good to see you. Good to see you too.
I was the president of Building Industries here in already small.
Who was one of the folks that interviewed me?
That was bought out.
Copy of the one, and then this actually
But no,
shows
I know.
what percent
It's pretty tough. I used to work
we
actually.
have. So if you look at
for
BCG, we
Sage
have
Hill.
12.3% of the state's
And then
population.
another company called HDR.
These BMT, actually, Land Miles, let me make a note on this.
Then I was on the CAC from 99.
Vehicle miles traveled.
But it's only on the state highway.
It's changed. There's some things that are pretty
Oh,
easy,
yeah.
you know, the basic stuff, and then stuff like this will change. You know, like
And that's where we're penalized because we have, given our size, we have very few state highways that run through our,
Most counties have 10 times
I'm here because
state highway.
Rainbow Falls?
Rainbow Falls, Lee Fountain does it.
Yeah,
They
it's
want
just outside Manatee.
They want
Stop at the bar.
Part of it is, because I asked, why don't we do like everybody else does?
I think they've opened it. Yeah.
Interview them.
Don't quote me.
So part of it is
Yeah.
but it doesn't,
I remember every time I
Giving more money to our area.
very large
Do you want to make one
portion of our
small area
population
happy,
are
is
retired
everybody else
seniors.
unhappy, or do you want to just keep one unhappy?
The last time they tried having just a citizen alert,
we've been unhappy for a long time.
that person is
No, Mountain Trail is the next couple of months, and that's one of the ones I haven't done yet.
personal agenda.
It's a nice area
Instead
to walk.
of trying to come up with a regional approach, what's
Last time I did Walden Canyon was 1960.
do their day.
their own thing. And it really, I guess, kind of at times.
Yeah, it's still closed.
So then they said from there on, the decision, I guess this was mid-90s, the decision was to,
Well, what did we pass?
I don't know. I'm sure we
the
didn't.
council members from that point forward,
That's all right. As long as we don't have to
so
run
that we,
That's right.
since we're already accountable,
add to 100 with
As long as I don't have to justify my
we'll have
answers,
to
that's,
come to be
that's,
accountable
that's
for
what I'm worried about.
Yeah, exactly.
Just take my word for it.
Well, I like to say just going through this process is very illuminating.
So, you know, one of the things they haven't used here is the bubble out there, where you sitting around and everybody bubbles up, you know, until you get
me and
some,
the one
you know, I used to,
close to techie guy on
we did
the
that in
council, I guess.
Los Angeles.
I don't know.
They were saying if we could have sent a council member to techie there, on the phone instead of
I
a,
hated that.
Maybe in a couple of years I could handle that.
our engineer needs to go out in a space and computer network.
It is. In fact, I
I sit here and feel like the dumbest guy in the room.
this could be my next meeting.
Always think some fantastic stuff.
But I think they're looking at the June meeting is having a new person.
Comes up with something. A completely new.
Can you bring your son? Does he have a driver's license yet?
No, he has his permit.
Oh, okay.
But he has not been motivated to get his driver's license.
Because then.
Most of his friends.
Then they'll bring up something that's.
It's to be a generational shift.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not sure, you want to try something, you can always write it on a piece of paper. I'm not pushing it. I'll probably encourage you to say something.
When our kids started driving at 16 in Texas, and both of them first year had a couple of accidents. One was serious, but nobody hurt him.
Well, least experience.
At the time, the Criminal Repair Defense Aeromedical Casualty
It comes over time.
And some afternoon, I got a
I
call
think that
from
when I
our
was there,
neighbors that our
that was
daughter
with experience.
had been driving
4 lanes.
68
I didn't say
Two
that.
lanes to 4 lanes, 2 lanes.
swim practice. One of her teammates got driving a brand new Fiero.
It's really, and I was representing El Paso County at the time, so I would just ask questions, you know, as it's related to El Paso County or to a project or something like that.
And spun her around through the oncoming traffic and over in the bar ditch in the
Once I caught on
opposite
to
direction.
the process, that was really important.
Just a telephone
One of the
pole
things I want
just
to know
a
is
hair.
they're redoing the
And
algorithm
they were
for how we're
taking her
doing
to
transportation laws at the state.
clinic. And the EMT guys,
Because
so I met him.
population, because that's very distressing.
The EMT guys put a medical
You would get
bandage
less.
on her forehead because she hit
I
the
mean,
mirror.
across the street, that would not be good. That would be disastrous.
Wife and neighbor.
Pushing an agenda.
What are you needing, those of us who are invited?
It is. I'm in short sleeve blue shirt and blue pants. This doctor in the mid-tech says, well, you can come in, but the women can't come in.
You'll see on the screen that these are the calculated results. I'll step out of the way just so people can see. But this is what was entered. And Brian's going to say a couple of things about what we're looking at here.
Sure. Well, we'll show you the results of what you all did today, and then we can open it up for any comments, you know, why you weighted or ranked things the way you did. If there's any opportunities.
Brian, could we get our sheets back to, just for the purpose of looking at this and comparing what came out versus what we did, and it may help in the discussions of getting a consensus.
Okay. And while those go out, some things that I noticed in looking at it, most important, system preservation and mobility have 12, so that means they're about 4 times more important than wildlife habitat and 3 times more important than infill. So that seems, safety is a close third, and then you see a pretty big drop to get down to, system, relatively speaking, system connectivity and cost-benefit stuff. So.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't remember what I wrote down.
Well, then you can't check on us.
You've kept them in the same order, can I assume?
Are you going to leave it like that? Are you going to sort it and rank them, or we just use the numbers as they are right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can sort them later.
That's fine.
To show what are the top weighted ones.
Right now, they're in the same order that they're on your sheet, so it's
Yeah.
easier for you to check.
I'm not on.
Oh, no, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay.
Okay. So I was handing some of those out. Craig, you spoke to some of the major findings, and
Yep.
did you talk about stormwater and air quality?
I didn't too much, no.
Okay. I'm just going to mention quickly that a couple of you did rank stormwater and air quality relatively high compared to what the top ranking ones are. So if anything, I mean, a 7.2 and a 5.9 is higher than some of the 4s and the 3, but that might be a question that somebody has that personally ranked those two higher. So we could talk about that if anyone feels really strongly about that.
You know, I'd be glad to.
Okay.
Some of you may not know who I am since I don't have a name tag. I'm Kit Rupe.
My understanding of federal highway dollars, and when they're spent, is about air quality. And stormwater is such a high priority here for our community, and to me, roadways act like dams. So, but from the air quality standpoint, I'm wondering, with such a low ranking, how will that impact us when it comes time to go after federal highway dollars?
It probably won't affect it too much. We'll still have to, when we actually do the project, we'll have to follow all the stormwater and air quality requirements when we design the projects. What this is showing is that when we trying to pick which projects are the best projects for our region, that we're more about the preserving what we have, congestion, and safety, which that's pretty standard actually around the country. Those three are three of the four national goals. They have another term for it. These air quality, stormwater, wildlife habitat are grouped into one in the federal requirements. So these are all sort of grouped together. Economic impact. This is another one that's a national requirement. Environmental justice is Title VI. That's been a long time requirement. We still have to follow all the rules, like environmental justice. When we pick our projects, the projects we pick, there are two requirements. One, the negative impacts from our investments cannot impact low-income minority at-risk populations more than they impact the other populations. And here's the key part, the benefits that our investments have to accrue at the same rates and at the same time to the low-income minority populations as they do to non. Since most low-income minority populations, or a large portion of low-income minority populations don't have a car, 7% of our region households don't have cars. So we automatically have to make additional investments. Every time you make $1 in investment in a car, you have to figure out something to help with those populations. So.
So you're saying that they will go through another filter?
Yes. We'll go through squirrel projects, and then we'll analyze all the set of projects we think is our fiscally constrained list to make sure that we're following all the federal rules like environmental justice. And if we're not, we need to go back and say, you know what? We didn't have any projects in the south central Colorado Springs, which is where most of our low-income minority populations are. Right. We're going to need to put in sidewalks, increase transit, whatever it is down there to balance it out.
Okay.
So.
Well, and that, really, those were some of the things that I placed a little higher, was the stormwater and air quality, because I know that it can affect the funding issues.
Well, and interesting, yesterday, I was actually out in D.C., and Secretary Fox actually, for the first time in this president's administration, proposed a reauthorization of the transportation law. And two of the key additions to that are stormwater considerations. Transportation dollars can be used to fund stormwater improvements, not just near roads, in other places.
So, is everyone familiar with the transportation law? Is there something you can say about why that's...
Then it's just a departure. Always.
Yeah, it is.
Transportation money, it comes from the gas tax, and it's generally been used for roads. Our interstate system's pretty much built out now, and so they're more focusing on the national highway system, but they're finding that there's a lot of social, economic, and environmental impacts from the road system, either directly or indirectly, that are, attributable to the road system. So they're, portioning off portions of funding to start funding those issues that had always been left to the state and locals to make up for. So.
Thanks, Craig. Jim.
Could that relatively mid-low ranking of air quality also reflect the fact that we're blessed with clean air, we're below standard, and it's not necessarily a priority here? Doesn't mean that it's not important, that it's a representation of what's more important right now, not that it's unimportant.
Yeah, we're running about 95% of the ozone standard, and depending on how fast people buy new cars, we may stay below. Once we haven't violated yet the ozone standard. Once we do, we're thrown into a different category, and something will have to be realigned at that point, but we haven't hit that point yet. Hopefully we don't.
Yeah. Okay. Elizabeth.
I also think that it's important to understand, and for me, all of these things were important. It was difficult for me to put something as a 1. I'm a stormwater engineer, so
it's very difficult for me to put stormwater as low as I did, because I still felt that it's important, Kit, like you said. But all of these things are important, I think. I mean, is that not true? Just because they're on the list itself
They've
ranks
already-
them higher than things that we don't consider important. These
Yeah.
are all very important.
And I know, Ellen, you shared that same concern, right? Saying that these all total are very important. So other people express the same thing.
Yeah, so
And
it's
these-
all important.
These did go through a process to get to the 13
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
we
had.
didn't, these are a filtered list already. And if you go back, when we started the list, we had 17 from the last plan, and those were developed in collaboration with Fish and Wildlife Service, EPA, Corps of Engineers, HUD. We had a lot of it, and so that's how we came up with this list. We compressed it somewhat, combined some of these into, but the board, they've been vetted before. None of these would classify as unimportant. And if you look, still putting 3% of our importance of, weighting on wildlife habitat is, that's better than 1% or half a, actually, the lowest you can get, I think, is a 0.5%. So.
Go ahead, Tamara.
Yes, I also ranked stormwater and air quality pretty high. I was wondering, is there any direct correlation between 12 and 13 with the number 4, mobility and congestion reduction? Are they kind of, is it inclusive in effect?
Well, when we start scoring the projects, I was talking earlier about the project scoring, a lot of these are going to work against each other, and sometimes they'll join up. So you'll find projects where the, infill and wildlife habitat, these are binary. You're either infilling or you're taking habitat. But for some of the others, congestion reduction and air quality, you reduce congestion, you're actually decreasing some of your air quality. It all depends on, some air quality goes down, some goes up in congestion. So you end up with this, sort of 14 criteria we have. They're pulling against each other in different ways. Sometimes they're helping, sometimes they're, and so when you get the total project scored, you'll be offsetting. It could be that, infill and air quality will offset, so would that be, infill and air quality would be 12, 13. So those two can offset a really good, congestion project. And they just cancel each other out, and then the others end up, pull it one way or the other towards funding or not.
But it sounds like, so that's a good observation, that there's a relationship between several of these. It also sounds like at the very end of the day that there is an actual person looking at this. It's not just going into a computer and that's how the final projects will be ranked, right? So there is a human being looking at this and applying additional objectiveness as they continue to finalize.
But all of our
the list.
computers are actually black boxes. Not very literal that
But they're not in the ocean, are they?
GIGO or GIGO or whatever they call it.
So another comment or question about those two bottom ones in particular, or is there another one that you'd like to talk about, Harold?
Well, I was just going to say that I ended up ranking stormwater, air quality, and wildlife relatively lowly because from my viewpoint, spending a limited amount of money on those alone, in other words, that's the only reason for doing them, is relatively low.
Right.
So normally those would either be dictated by federal or other, criteria in order to get money, number one. Or number two, they would be a part of one of the other more, higher prioritized, criteria.
Yeah, and one of the things we have to do with the last plan, it was new, is when we identify all the impacts our projects are going to have, like wildlife habitat impacts, we now have to have a plan that tells us how are we going to mitigate those impacts in our plan. So if we take a bunch of habitat, we also have to say, okay, and we're going to mitigate it by doing X, and it's going to cost this much, which will bring our pool of funds down, because we have to have that mitigation plan in our plan now.
Protect that Pueblo jumping mouse or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah,
So we're going to,
Okay, so Harold and Jim, some good rationale about why those decisions were made in the ranking, and I'm going to get a comment from Bob and then John.
Question, what's a combined
That's fine.
weight mean?
Grab, okay, we'll come back
What's
to Bob.
combined weight?
oh, that's taking both the ranking and the weighting in together. and coming up with a single number from those two additional numbers.
Is it an average?
It is.
Bob?
Those of you who have seen the tax, same calculations, do we have collision points?
No, this is the most harmonious I've seen the TAC and CAC in their scoring.
You got us to the next point, which is what we were going to show. So that's the screen now, and they're quite similar. Do you have any other thoughts about that, Brian or Craig?
Oh, that's the closest, I remember them being
like
in
we
a number of
peaked.
years.
Yeah.
That'll make the board.
I think we know. I think we're more comfortable with the system, and we're understanding how things are. I think we're. So.
Very good.
Okay.
I think
so
part
we'll
of the
get
reason
Alan
is
and
that
then
the tax stuff was in front of us. I mean, you could see it.
Well,
What did
I
you
didn't
say?
see it.
he says he said the TAC numbers were in front of him, so therefore they may have
were?
influenced. I didn't have it.
I didn't really.
It's not
I
that
didn't
Alan has a copy.
Only some of us.
Alan, you cheated.
Oh, a cheat sheet, huh?
Only some of us cheated.
I didn't have them.
That's the CAC.
Larry, what
I
was
haven't
your
even
Well,
seen
I had, going back to our ratings, I had ranked cost effectiveness a little bit higher for a lot of the comments saying here that the air quality and some of the other things are going to be required by law. So the cost, the bigger bang for the buck was what I was looking for, saying that if we can do a cost analysis, cost-benefit analysis, and two projects cover the others by law, then the cost-benefit would be the key factor, I would think.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I ranked them a little
And
higher.
I would tell you 2 plans ago, the first 2035 plan, that was the closest the board came to, instead of using an average, to going in and saying, you know what, we're going to take points away from these others and add them to cost effectiveness. Because that life cycle benefit cost, getting bang for the buck, our board was all about that to the first 2035 plan. So.
Well, it's still high. It's
Yeah, it's still pretty high.
third, fourth, something.
Any major surprises about the comparison?
Excuse me. I just want to go back to Al's comment. I think I'm looking at the same thing, but it just says example of resolving differences. They aren't the actual numbers, are they?
There's a tax, I was
Yeah,
here from last time when there were 17.
Right.
Okay.
And it's so, it was fair, it was an easy look to transfer from 17.
I mean, this is amazing to me.
Similar.
My only comment would be that I think you can stand up in your meetings, Bob, and say, this was arrived at independently,
I
and
think so.
it meets,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
it meets.
But we
another.
still have people that aren't here, so we haven't made a decision yet. We need to make that in our meeting at 3 o'clock, so.
Yep.
You're right, though.
Yeah, but Tom Moll's not here.
Yeah.
He's the statistician.
Let's lock him out.
Did not hear that. Go ahead, please.
Well, I think to your point, it seems to me that some of this is situational over periods of time. 2 years ago, I doubt if stormwater would have gotten the same kind of evaluation for any of us. But I'm kind of with Tamara. I ranked stormwater higher simply because I'm aware of what our recent history has been.
That makes sense. Okay, Elizabeth.
I want to know how the few of us who spoke up about stormwater all ranked it relatively high. It got such a low number. So those of you who aren't speaking up must have voted it really low.
Really,
ranked it
really
really,
low.
really low.
Well, I think again, to validate Larry's statement, I was trying to put safety very high in my personal ratings. And by the time I did that, I found there were other things I was rating lower, but not wishing to. But if, it's under the general overview, umbrella of safety,
ranking.
stormwater would be a consideration, how to deal with that. But again, I think several of us have said it now, it's really hard when they're all very important to you to come up with a value for each that really reflects how you feel about it. It's quite the test of one's intellect.
I failed.
Yeah, I think this is, I congratulate the new members that grasped this, because as Ellen and Elizabeth both have said, is they're all important, but I think Harold made a real good point, too. Some of these are embedded in any project. and the criteria to meet and match those, you have to kind of consider it if a standalone project is competing against the other things as that, like a congestion or just a stormwater project or something. Where does it rank against those other issues for the greater large of the community? Whereas stormwater affects us all, but it affects certain communities more than it does the larger community. I mean, those folks that live out in Peyton don't worry about the Fountain Creek flooding stuff. Doesn't affect them really. And so, but good kudos to the folks that grasp this, because for some of us who've been through this 3 or 4 times, it's not easy to pick up on. So, good job.
Okay, go ahead, John.
I think that transportation dollars should be used to solve transportation problems, not wildlife problems or stormwater problems. I think every project ought to keep those issues in mind and designed to accommodate them, but shouldn't be a basis on selecting projects.
So that was your rationale and how you ranked it?
Yeah, I was down in one and two out of 100, for some of those.
Can I just add a couple other things? I mean, safety is part of federal highways. I mean, you can't do a project and safety not be part of it. So some of our arguments are kind of confusing for me, if nothing else. For stormwater, I've seen even in the flat areas where a street or a road or something like that can act like a dam, and then you have a completely washed out road. So to me, stormwater ranked because of that. I mean, the most unexpected circumstances can arise because you don't have it well thought out. So
There was one in Pensacola yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
Used to not know
but
where,
I think
I know where the
an
road is.
experience of doing this with other groups,
Well,
that
under
the
resilience.
I know exactly where that road is.
findings are that they're not always mutually exclusive. So what you're talking about is what we've tried to underline is that there are relationships, and some of them, no matter what, safety could feasibly be a part of all 13
Exactly.
or the other 12.
that's exactly right.
So I think that point is resonating with the group. So it's 5-3. I think everybody did a really great job. I was quite impressed. I was expecting broken pencils and crumpled up paper.
I thought it took a long time to, get everything pulled together. That's the only complaint we have.
Well, and the handouts help.
Sorry, just,
So the examples were helpful.
I know.
Thank you for your efforts in
Yeah,
this.
well, it was a pleasure. I'm glad I was here.
Very good.
So, stick around. Your next meeting is going to start shortly, and I'll be here for a few minutes if anybody else has anything to talk to me about, but otherwise, good work.
Thanks, Amy.
Sheets back?
Oh,
Sure, we can-
Brian, you want these back?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Pass them down.
Sorry, I found scribbled information on it
That's
that
okay.
I thought I was going to.
Thanks for
Yeah,
fixing
let
them.
me.
Plenty of what?
Just handouts. They always have extra handouts.
Is that the same one that went in the package?
It's new.
No.
Over here.
Why don't you all take a 5-minute break? We'll
Absolutely. I wrote down what my answers were. I refused to look here. I absolutely refused to.
I passed them down.
He's not going anywhere.
From this position.
I don't think we want to keep Joe on the leash.
I'm going to have an issue with my neck.
I thought that they were examples of how to do it and how not to do it, because they were exactly reversed
We
in
can
their
slide this way.
numbers. I thought it was like,
So we'll just,
I'm used to planning.
Pencils back.
It's never good. I always forget.
Put your mind in on it.
Next thing I know, I'm hurting. Sore neck today anyway.
okay, thank you.
Bad. Do you need to for the
I don't think so.
That's pretty amazing.
Thank you very much.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I'm just going to go home. I was already thinking that on the way here. My husband will be working. He's going to be rubbing that neck out tonight. That's got a kinky night for 2 days. But went to work. I went to a quilt retreat this weekend, and I'm sure that's what happened.
You know how they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, order them. Not re-rank. Put them in a.
You want me to do it? Mike and his brother. Over the weekend, to do the Royal Railroad. We'd never done it.
Whoa.
And as we're getting on board
like having a
and getting settled,
smartphone.
when the observation got, oh, this is going to be great. The rubberneck thing, right? And my brother-in-law said, I swear within But we were talking, we'll all do different things in our spare time for the community and for our own communities. Anyway, the point was, he said, well, you know, you do that and then you cushion it.
I hear someone say, but federal highway.
Yeah, you remember that. That got us into the conversation. What's happening?
Exactly, and in my book retreat over there,
Sorted.
I didn't think about it until, I mean, I thought about it before I went, because I get up and stretch and do everything. And then when I got into it, you get engrossed in it, you don't do that. And by 11 o'clock Saturday night, because you stay up as late as you can, you never stay up that late, I was doing these squats to get
In case somebody asks to see
because they were so
how
sore
they
from
were sorted
standing over an
or
iron
ranking,
board for so
how they
long.
ended up.
And I was just like, oh, my knees are killing me. So I had to end up bending in squats and everything, just to get my knees back a couple times. So it's exactly right. You don't move every 45 minutes and eventually you'll get hurt.
It's a new adventure. Yeah, I'm walking up to the office as my friend. What a good surprise. Brought training supplies from Olympic. Not huge. Yes. Not being cut of
No, I've lost
She'll appreciate it.
34 pounds in 5 months just by eating correctly.
Thank you. So that's the last sheet? Okay.
Eating correctly.
That's the last sheet.
No exercise. I
Thank
wish
you.
I
That
could
went really
have
well.
the time and energy to work out. And I tried. And I did really good for a week. Then I got sick and got off it. So I'll get back to it eventually. But just by eating and putting the right foods into my body instead of the bad foods. Oh dear. Yes. Yes.
So I can understand much better the
I have this thing reusing envelopes. I should do that. That is amazing. Stormwater. I ranked it high too. I mean, like 5 or 6 of us said we ranked it high. The people who didn't rank it, they had to have, or they didn't had to have ranked it very low. Cute haircut. I love it. Hi there. You look completely different.
We enjoy the years that we were there. It was all right.
Was it scary?
other kids, Cindy could not find it. They defended me.
I have no choice.
My daughter, there's blood.
Oh, thanks.
Yes,
Let me get the
that's
main water
easy
off.
for you. See, mine is easy for me. It just does this all by itself. I don't do this. See, so I love
It
it.
looks really good. It's very yeah, it's beautiful.
I realized when you were here, I just dropped envelopes on the farm to people. That is so.
And if it's easy, that's the right cut for you then. You know? Yeah, exactly. See, mine, I couldn't get it to go that straight. If I wanted it to. I have one back here that I have to work on. So close. Yeah. I was trying to grow mine out for the last 3 or 4 months, and I finally last about a week, 2 weeks ago, I had to cut it back off again. It just doesn't work. My hair. Oh, well, that's right. The train wreck that it is. Well, that's my style, is the train wreck.
To start with, I mean, it was cesarean, this is not going to be good. You know.
I don't know if that's she worked with her hair and got to have it. For her to try to get her to stand up. It was fine.
No, I think I've got it. No, yeah, I accidentally grabbed the tea bag. The tea bag got my fingers. I was setting it down.
The 1 year.
Yep. Well, you're right. Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Oh, mine would start to drop. Hey.
Hi, Jim.
We need something first. We need something.
Yeah.
Concrete.
You know, I think Ray.
Here, right?
I don't call mine naturally curly.
Because the longer it gets a wave.
Some people just curly like this or kick back and forth. Mine, the longer it gets, the
No, you're fine.
Do you mind
Oh,
if
yeah,
I
absolutely.
join you?
No, that's
I just need a spare seat. How are you?
Is this yours?
No, it's this crazy. You look familiar. I think I've met you before.
Yeah, it is.
Crazy.
Everybody, we need to move on.
Oh, come on.
No.
I've got my official binder.
We definitely have a quorum, and I thank all of you that participated in the workshop. It was productive. It was wonderful that we went through that process, and it ended up with the kind of conclusive stuff that we did. And I was also amazed that we came anywhere close to what the TAC had done, which that's a good thing, I think, as far as moving forward. We need an approval of the agenda. The agenda has been changed. I have one with 15 items on it. I think the other one was sent out and has a 16th item on it, correct? Right.
I'll give it extra copies.
Well, you don't, I'll wing it. Thank you. Got one. So could we have a motion? Is there anything else that needs to be added on to the agenda? The thing that has been, Jason, the thing that's been added on is item number 12?
The census urbanized area boundaries.
Okay, all right. Jacqueline's bringing them around if there are other people who didn't make a copy of it. So could we have a motion for approval of the agenda, please?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, same sign? Thank you. Aye.
We said same sign.
Public comments. Any public comments? It's a little thin out there. We normally go around and do introductions. What I'd like is just for the new members, Kit, we'll start with you, just to kind of say who you are, what you do, but most importantly, I think, is what drew you to this process, wanting to come on, and we'll do that with all three of you.
Very good. My name is Kit Rupe. I'm a member at large, and I was intrigued with joining this group because I'm running for state representative. And I think that our projects are very important to this region, and we need some advocacy about these projects, some representation. I actually served on the CAC many years ago and was the chairperson for a while, so that gives me some background and experience. Okay. And I don't want it to overshadow all of you. You've all been working very hard, and many of you have just as much tenor as I did when I was here. So it's nice to be back and be able to cooperate and learn some things and have a better understanding of what's going on here. And I hope to be a better advocate for our community by being engaged at this level.
Great.
Thank
you. Michelle, we'll go to you next.
Oh.
Ladies
No.
ladies before gentlemen.
In order. I'm Michelle Day. I was drew to becoming a part of the committee because I was interested in how some of the decisions are made for the transportation and air quality and other things that affect our region. So I wanted to get involved in that process.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Thank you for using the word gentleman. I appreciate it.
It was an error.
I'm Jim Moore, retired Air Force. Been in the community since 1987, retired in 92 from the Air Force. have been involved in a variety of community activities. It's kind of a predisposition on my part. Had my fingers burned a little bit in the governmental process, but for the last year or so, I represented the Military Affairs Council to the larger PPACG board, and was very much impressed with what I was seeing coming from this organization, this committee, in terms of material that was influencing the work of the board. I also have had the benefit of counsel from Brother Creeley, and despite that, I applied anyway. So I'm looking forward to participating in what I think is probably one of the most important and least understood in the community committees as far as long-term impact.
Yep. Thank you. Glad to have you all aboard, and nice to have the kinds of experiences that you have. You will definitely enhance the work that this committee does. Approval of the minutes. Need a motion for that, please.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments, corrections in anybody's mind? Those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Hopefully none. Board of Directors report. I'll go through this fairly quickly, and I guess it struck me that the organization that we are a part of, PPACG, continues to have a clean audit. And enough said. That means that the record keeping is taking care of what it needs to, and it's meeting the requirements of CPAs. They approved TIP Amendments 14 and 15 as previously recommended by the CAC and the TAC. So if you will recall, that completes the funding requirement for the Cimarron interchange, $95 million. And number 15 allows a purpose change of dollars for a downtown transfer station relocation study. Previously, those dollars were under planning, but specifically, it approves the transportation station relocation study. They approved the objectives, targets, and project evaluation criteria for the 2040 Moving Forward Regional Transportation Plan, the TIP, which were, of course, approved by us and recommended by us and recommended by the TAC. There was a presentation of a draft water quality white paper, which is to inform and guide various, the region, basically, in how to monitor water quality. And I won't get into that because I would assume some point that we will have a presentation by Rich Muzzy. But it was interesting. What they're looking for are various, in our regional streams and tributaries, they're looking for pollutant levels that exceed certain levels of arsenic, copper, E. coli, nutrients, water temperatures, and things like that. And it was interesting to see the scope of all of the organizations that sit at the table of PPACG, plus the whole Pueblo area, and all the stream studies that are going to be done, and the monitoring that's going on in all of those streams, which I think also has something to do with the discussion that we had earlier of stormwater runoff, and certainly keeping Pueblo happy is one of the things that probably happens as a result of that. Perhaps the most interesting discussion item that I took away from this meeting was around a discussion of the STAC, the Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee, and its funding formula. I think all of you have, well, I should say most of you have been around this process long enough to know that we seem to be the wrong term, ugly stepchild, but we seem to be of least regard, at least as we view it, as to the level of funding that comes our way here in southern Colorado. Well, the current formula that is used is state highway miles account for 45% of the formula that they use to calculate how they're going to fund state highway dollars to areas. Now, if you'll think about state highways in this area, in El Paso County, we have very few. Craig, what was the terminology that you used? We could double the state highway miles that we have in our area.
And we'd still be last. If you, we have about 2,200 people per lane mile of state highway in our area. There are other counties that have 4 people per state highway lane mile. So 500 times.
But they have far more, they have a lot of miles of state highway running through their areas.
So the counties have a lot more of the state highways. And so when you use that as a calculation, and about half the CDOT's funding comes from the federal government, and so it should be the national highway system, which we have our fair share of the national highway system.
Yeah, we do.
It's the state highway system.
It's state highway system for state dollars.
Yes.
Then it's the number of vehicle miles traveled, and the number, and that's 40%, so 45 and 40, and then the number of truck miles is 15% in the current calculation.
And those are only on the state highways.
Only on the state highway.
On the state highways. It's not vehicle miles traveled in our region, it's just on the state highways.
That's correct. So the rub has been that there is no factor for population. The process has been dominated rurally, primarily. And there is a proposal that is going forward for changing that. Incidentally, that results in Region 2 receiving 5.3% of the total state funding. Okay? The Gruen proposal, Les Gruen, who he sits on the state board, is that highway miles would be 35% of the formula, number of vehicle miles 15% of the formula, and population 50% of the formula. That's a huge change. I would say that the problem is that it's a zero-sum game. There's just X amount of dollars. So if you would increase the dollars that would come to the more populous areas, you would reduce the dollars going to the less populous areas. But that is also the staff recommendation, as I understand it. There is a recognition on the part of the state that there has been this disparity, and Colorado Springs has really, and the surrounding metropolitan area, counties, have been hurt by this process. So there is some hope, and the increase would be, if that formula were adopted, it would increase funding from 5.3% to 8%, a substantial increase. I don't know what the dollars would be, but it would be truly a recognition. I think that we are, in fact, help me, Craig, again, as far as population is concerned,
about 12.5% of the
12.5%, but 8% funding of those funds would pull us where we haven't been. There was a written agreement of some kind, too, was there not?
Yeah, we've got written agreements, or have had written agreements with the CDOT headquarters, which was we called our MOU. That expired last year, and we also still have some written agreements with CDOT Region 2 on how to split up some of these funds within Region 2, because the funds actually go to the CDOT engineering region, and then they get split out from there. And so we have an agreement with Region 2 about what percentage of the whole Region 2 pot should we expect. So we have a couple of them that.
Harold?
Well, going from 5% to 8% is a 60% increase in funding. I mean, that's, that's what the actual dollars increase 60%.
We figured it would be about an increase of $5 million a year.
To $5 million, a couple $1 million an extra per year.
Yeah, that's right.
The other thing, well, I won't say games, but the other thing that for RPP, the funding level has varied from $100 to $120 million a year to $10 million a year. We're trying to get in at the $50 million range. So if it's $50 million a year, and we get about 8% of it, that's $4 million per year that we can get. And if we work it right with CDOT Region 2, we get none in 1 year, 8 in the next, which is enough to do a project, and then none, and then 8. And so we work with them on terms of that. So,
yes, Jim.
Is there anything
interesting that Commissioner Gruen? This is somewhat different from policies I've heard him espouse before, in which the rural communities don't have the revenue generating, and therefore that the richer community or the more populous communities have to pay that, and it's kind of the way it is, because otherwise their roads would deteriorate. So it's real interesting to wonder where this shift in his thinking is coming from, because when we were having discussions about Highway, 94, and we were having all this stuff, and we met with him, his thinking wasn't the same as this proposal is.
well, this isn't actually his proposal. This came out of a workshop of the TMAs we're doing with CDOT. CDOT has to have us participate in the resource allocation. So this was developed by that subcommittee, and Commissioner Gruen has latched onto it as a way to help increase funds. But it's not his proposal.
He's listening to the constituency for once.
So I should scratch the Gruen proposal from this?
It's called the CDOT staff proposal.
Yeah, that's what it says on that sheet you gave. Yeah. All right. Any questions, further questions? Okay.
Is there anything that we at the CAC level can do to assist in the evolution of its thinking?
I think that's pretty well understood at this point in time. In the board meetings that I've attended, there's been plenty of comment locally about our need. So I don't think so. I think it's been communicated. CAC, TAC, board, I think it's all there. Larry, you've got another recommendation.
Yes, there's a letter in your package that has all the details in it, but basically the nominating committee, Ellen Haas and Kathleen Johnson and myself, did another series of interviews to fill the fourth at-large vacancy, Tom Moles vacancy that's going to be vacant in 31 May. And after the interviews, we recommended that we select Vince Russenack to fill the fourth at-large opening. Vince, I don't think his resume is in the package, but he's a Air Force Academy graduate, retired from the Air Force. He was a civil engineer in the Air Force, very familiar with infrastructure issues and solutions and how to think about the infrastructure issues. He is a realtor. He owns Russenack Realty. He's very aware of the transportation, aging, special needs issues that we've discussed in the CAC, and we felt he was the best candidate to fill the remaining open at-large position. Very articulate. I think you'll be an asset.
Thank you. And we need to recommend this on.
Need a
So
motion to
we need a
approve the
motion, so why don't you
recommendation.
put the motion on the floor? Did you put it on the floor?
We recommend Vince Rusinek to fill the vacancy from Tom Moles, 31 May.
And a second. Discussion? How many people know Vince? Yeah, he's pretty well known around the community.
He provides a lot of feedback, even as a citizen.
Yeah, he'll be good.
We've got several letters from him.
We did use Air Force and they keep together.
Those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm Jim Moore.
None. All right. Let's see. You know, Larry, I'd just like to thank you and your committee for the excellent work. I think it's been one of the...
Ellen and Kathleen were excellent.
Yeah,
They did most
it's-
of the work, I just signed the paperwork.
Well, it took some organization and a lot of interviewing, so it's much appreciated. Thank you. All right, Title 8, or Title 6. Woo! Let's do Title 9. That's athletic.
Title 9, we can go to the store. Hi, Yolanda Roberts, PPACG Transportation. Last month, you saw a presentation on Title VI and the Limited English Proficiency Plans, LEP plans. Just to give you a quick recap, the intent of Title VI and LEP plans is to obviously inform the public of their rights under Title VI and to encourage participation for those groups traditionally underserved by transportation investments. Part of what the CDOT FHWA are making MPOs do is that for our public outreach for Title VI and LEP, we have to have outreach strategies that include the underserved population. We have to address the needs of the LEP persons in the region. We have to provide translation services when needed, as long as they're not too costly. We have to maintain a formal complaint process and complaint log. So the U.S. Census shows Hispanics as the largest minority in the region and Spanish as the primary language of households who speak English less than well. So with that, PPACG has to translate vital documents, and those include the policy statement, the Title VI policy statement, the complaint process, and the complaint form. And these will be available on our website once this is approved. In addition, Title VI and LEP will probably be lumped with a public participation plan. Every 4 years, right now we're working on a regional transportation plan. We've already passed the public participation plan, and right now we're working on Title VI and LEP. But the next time we go through the next go-around, we're going to lump those three together because they kind of combine with each other. And that is so we can be in compliance. And any questions?
Yolanda, what is the penalty were we not to do this?
Well, MAP 21 has changed things, and I think we would get a finding in our certification process, and that would not be good. So it could conceivably...
If you get a finding and you don't correct it, then you become decertified, and all of our duties for transportation planning revert to CDOT. So
That answered my question.
He always says it more brusquely than I do. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I apologize if this is a dumb question, but how does sight and hearing impaired, is that
Yeah, we'll have to get, if we ever have someone asking for hearing impaired, I have a list of a whole bunch of translation services, and they include that. I don't want to say who they are yet because we haven't used them yet, so we haven't vetted them yet. But yes, we would include that in this as well.
Okay.
Jim?
Is there a process in place to assure accuracy in the translation so that we don't get into Chevy Nova kinds of things?
Well, the funny thing is we haven't had any requests to do it yet. So I think this will be a trial process for coming in the future, especially for this summer. So I don't know quite what to say to that, to answer that one. But we're going to see how these different translators, interpreters work for us.
So I guess I'm confused now. Are we approving a process whereby you are going to translate documents?
Upon request.
You will do it only on request?
Only upon request.
Okay, thank you.
Al, then Harold.
Is there an alternative to just publishing these on the web? I'm concerned that some people in that community may not have terribly good access. A complaint form.
Well, it has to be published on our website. That is a definite. So we have to show that we have that. And then when we have like a public open house, we'll have to show at the bottom, probably in our advertisements, that, by the way, we can provide Spanish speaking or hearing impaired services.
So they would get then the complaint.
But they would have to then inform us ahead of time so we know to have those translators, interpreters there at the meeting, at the open house. Because you'd have to know ahead of time. You can't just constantly have, it's very expensive to hire someone, and then no one comes, or no one who speaks Spanish comes, so that wouldn't.
So, Yolanda, does it go out in the agenda or something like that, that translation services are available upon request?
It would probably go out in all our public outreach efforts. So anytime we have an open house or any of those types of meetings, we could say, if you do need hearing impaired services or if you do need Spanish translation services, please let us know.
Harold?
Is there a short explanation or more detail on the final bullet that's in the handout? I apologize, I wasn't here last month. The reasonable accommodation, that's
Oh, that's for the disabled.
okay. Thank you.
We need a motion for that we have reviewed, and we do recommend. Somebody step forward, please.
Recommended.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion, questions? Those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None. Thank you,
Thank you.
Yolanda. Okay, Craig.
Good afternoon again. Amendment 16 presents two ways to do one of our board's priorities, which is fund the Fillmore interchange, create a diverging diamond interchange at Fillmore and I-25. The TAC had a workshop about 3 weeks ago now, and we had to resolve some issues with funding. MAP 21 changed how much we're getting in funding by year in different categories. Some went up, some went down, and CDOT also in their cash management process had found that they hadn't given us a lot of the money that we should have gotten. So they had a pool of funds that they owed us. And so we went through a process to, take money out of projects in this year and then put it in this year and just process balancing our funds. And in going through that process, and with CDOT's extra money, we found the funds, the Fillmore interchange had been $2 million short of funding. CDOT said they thought they could get about $700,000, which I found out on Monday. We did, in fact, get $700,000 in additional funds. So we're still $1.3 million short. At the workshop was discussed to put that $1.3 million out of Metro onto the project, and we started that TIP process. At the TAC meeting, the city had an alternative proposal to take $1 million of PPRTA maintenance funds and put that onto the Fillmore interchange and save the $1 million in Metro to use on other projects, specifically Powers widening. That's a good proposal. It still gets the project fully funded, but there's some concerns that this would be a policy change on the part of the PPRTA board to take regional maintenance funds and put it on a CDOT capital project. And so there was a conditional recommendation by TAC to do that. Staff explained that with the proposal, the Metro proposal, the project still gets to go forward, and if the PPRTA does make that policy change, then we can administratively move the Metro dollars, out of the project and put the PPRTA funds in. But the TAC still felt strongly that to put the PPRTA maintenance dollars into the Cimarron project and take the Metro out. So that's why there are currently two pending separate proposals.
Jim?
Is this going to be presented to the RTA CAC next week?
I assume so. Tim Roberts is actually, is this going to the RTA CAC?
Yes, my understanding it is.
Okay. So if it's not approved, just to understand, thanks, Tim, understanding your proposal, so if for some reason the RTA CAC and subsequently the board, which meets after our board, after the PPACG board, doesn't approve that change from maintenance to capital, then which policy are we sending forward? Are we sending the one we'll still be 300,000 short, I mean 700,000 short?
Well, no, the CAC, you all need to make a recommendation. The staff's recommendation is to use $1.3 million in Metro funds, and if the RTA comes in later, at some point in the future, we can put the $1 million in maintenance in then, administratively, which is a one-hour process. If the TAC proposal goes forward and the RTA does not choose to put the maintenance in, then we'd have to come back through the process, and we'd lose a month. Talking to CDOT, they think there's still that month cushion, so it's possible that it wouldn't affect the timing at all either way. But I'd rather get it done in a way that we know we can get it done quickly, easily, and then move on.
You're referring to the Metro proposal?
Metro proposal, yeah, because administratively, if it gets amended in with Metro, and the RTA does vote to put in the maintenance funds, we take it out. We get a letter, and it's out in less than half a day. It doesn't change anything, as opposed to having to wait, cycle back through it for another month. So,
Go ahead, Jason.
Here's the elephant in the room, and this is a really important thing to understand. PPRTA is an entirely separate government. It is its own government. It taxes people, it collects those taxes, it spends those taxes. It is a government. It is as much a government as the city of Colorado Springs, the county of El Paso. So the other unprecedented part of this is the TAC is basically recommending that another government's money be spent for some projects. That's kind of the elephant in the room, and a very big takeaway for everyone. And that's usually when I talk to the media, on PPRTA related stuff, my very first point is the PPRTA is its own government. So, however comfortable you feel about recommending that you spend another government's money, that's up to you, but keep that in mind.
Well, they know it's coming, correct?
It's on their budget, yes. If you look at the Appendix B in your packet, on the approval of the 2014 budget, they have the line item at the bottom. It's the last line item on the page, and it shows the $1 million of PPRTA funds going towards the Fillmore interchange.
Okay. Jan?
What are the projects, the maintenance projects that, first of all, I'm not sure how you can say, oh, by the way, we need you to pay for this, but what projects, maintenance projects, are likely to be sacrificed in order for us to review or recommend that those funds be moved to Fillmore?
It's not sacrificing any maintenance funds because it's already programmed in the budget. So we're not taking away from any of the planned infrastructure maintenance projects.
Okay.
That money's already $1 million identified in the 2014 budget.
Is there a better word that can be used than we recommend that you use your funds? Is there, I understand if it's already in your budget.
As per your budget?
Should it be coming the other way?
Is it appropriate?
Should PPRTA say, we recommend that you use our dollars?
Yeah, I know, I was just looking at the way.
Is it appropriate for us to suggest that we could endorse their decision?
See, they use it for other changes.
I'll put my PPRTA hat on. Rob McDonald, Executive Director of PPACG, Pikes Peak RTA. Pikes Peak RTA has a policy question for their citizen group next Wednesday of should they use even budgeted maintenance dollars for a state highway capital project. And so there's different variations of that. Two of them say, sure, go ahead and use local maintenance dollars
derived, collected by PPRTA for state highway purposes. It's never been done in the first 9 years of the PPRTA. That's why it's a policy decision eventually by that other government, PPRTA, and their board. So they're going to have that policy discussion next Wednesday, and then the board will have it on the 14th in the afternoon after PPACG, who you all recommend to, they will consider funding this I-25 Fillmore project, as they have in the past with I-25 widening and I-25 Cimarron. When CDOT's short of state money, we've put forth, and the TAC and you all have put forth a recommendation to the board using that STP Metro money. So you use federal state money to do a state project. I don't think PPACG has really brought forward using local money like County Road and Bridge or City General Fund or the tax down in Fountain, right? They have a tax, so I guess the TAC could say, hey, they have money for stuff. We should put that in a conditional recommendation. So that's the difference in why your recommendation, and I think staff did a great job outlining to you. The difference is, the $700,000 from the state, that's good. Everyone agrees on that. $300,000 in STP Metro, everyone agrees on that. It's that last $1 million in. Does the board, PPACG board, follow tradition in the last two projects to use federal money matching state and be done, or new wrinkle, use PPRTA money, which is their maintenance money? But as Jason said, he's exactly right. It's a separate government decision whether they allow maintenance money to be used on a state highway anything project. And so that's not your decision, but I think it's important to know that that's a pending action by a separate government. And so when they make their decision, as Craig pointed out, it's exactly right. Staff's recommending to you, if you go the way staff recommends, we can do overnight admin amendment. If PPRTA board says, sure, that's good. If you do it the other way, you're going to see us again in a month saying, well, we now have to do another TIP amendment through the TAC and the CAC because that's the kind of money we have to reconcile. So hopefully that gives some more detail to it.
I can add one more point, too. Generally, when we do applications, we require a letter from the government that they're going to put local money in. That's we do applications, call for projects, and they say yes. And the city manager or the mayor, whatever, public works director, gives us a letter that says, yes, we are going to put these funds on these projects. We don't have something like that from the RTA, so yet.
Well, our motion is, the proposed motion really doesn't even mention this activity. It recommends that the PPACG Board of Directors approve Amendment Number 16 as identified in either Attachment 3, Staff, or Attachment 1, TAC.
You have to pick one.
It doesn't say that we have to pick one, does it? It says or.
Choose one, or A or B. Is that what you're saying?
A or B, yes.
Harold?
Actually, I think Jim was next.
I was just going to make a motion, so you got discussion or something?
Well, I was going to go back to Jen's point, because I must admit that I get confused sometimes when we talked about funding, and we ask what the impact is if we do this, what about the money? And we're told it has no impact. If, in fact, we don't take the $1 million, or better yet, if, in fact, PPRT doesn't allow the $1 million to be used, will that money be used for further maintenance? It makes sense to me.
Yes. Yeah, the $1 million, it will not go unspent.
But on the one hand, it's spent on maintenance, and there are growing issues with the road maintenance in El Paso County. We're seeing a lot of difficulty over the winter.
Yeah. You mentioned, well, the money will be reprogrammed somewhere within the RTA. But you also mentioned what won't get done. Well, right now, the proposal we're recommending uses identified monies to make sure that the Power Stewart Airport interchange gets constructed because it's short the $3.5 million. If we take that $1 million of Metro monies, apply it to Fillmore, then we're taking a chance that CDOT has $1 million to fill, or somebody else has that $1 million to fill, that we don't have monies targeted, identified, or anything to make sure that that project happens. our proposal makes sure both projects happen. The other one kind of puts it, in our mind, a little more to chance.
Is there, can I
Go ahead. The Powers project, though, hasn't been through a call for projects, so we can't actually take the money and put it onto Powers. We leave it in a pool, and the next time we do a call for projects, if that project scores best, then it gets recommended, and the board can, or nobody else applies. An issue, though, is that's not actually our board's next priority. If you look in the packet, the board's next priority, their number 3 project that isn't funded right now is 8th Street interchange with US 24. That's what the board has said is our next priority, not the Powers widening. So it's also, the tax recommendation is also telling the board that the board's priorities are wrong, which staff really wants no part of. So.
Jim, go ahead.
I sit on the RTA CAC, and I'm not sure this is going to float, honestly, within that group. But that's, again, not our action. I would like to propose, if I understand the staff proposal, is that we use the $1.3 million of Metro money added to the $700,000 from CDOT to fully fund the Fillmore interchange.
Correct.
I would like to make that proposal.
Second.
Any other questions?
Further discussion? Here's another question I have, and it's, if the Gazette saw that this part of government was telling another government to do something, it'd be kind of seen as overstepping or something like that. Is there any concern about that at all? I mean, we have, at best, we can use suasion. They got to do what they want to do.
Yeah, I think it's a great country we live in. Anyone can make any recommendation they want. I think why the PPRTA will have its own policy discussion, because this is new and different. Doesn't mean it won't happen. I mean, the citizen committee of the PPRTA will weigh in. Their board will make the decision. Do we use maintenance money? Now, here's the big what if. Telling another government how to spend their money, even though it's in the budget, the way the PPRTA works, it has to come out of the budget with a contract, intergovernmental agreement, cocktail napkin filled out with some agreement. Has to have something to come out of the budget. I mean, they have a $140 million budget. PPRTA doesn't write a check to city, county, and say, spend it because it's in the budget. When there's a policy change differential, they will decide that. So it's a little precedent setting for a PPACG committee to look into another agency's budget to conditionally approve it. It probably would have been easier if they had gone through PPRTA first, got the policy decision, then said, good, we're confirmed, PPRTA says that budgeted amount of money under maintenance can go for that purpose. Then it sails through the TAC and you guys and staff. But staff, we're hamstrung because we don't speak on behalf of PPRTA. Their board can speak all by themselves. And so the big precedent question is, for maintenance money of the PPRTA, it's $30 million a year for the 5 governments that collectively get $30 million. So the precedent setting is, could that $30 million of local roadway maintenance funding in the county, the city, Manitou, Green Mountain Falls, and Rama, could that be used on state highway projects? That's a huge shift in PPRTA philosophy of it's a local 1-cent sales tax collected locally for local roads that when it was sold, it's not a big leap that we need local money for local roads. So that's why it's a policy question for PPRTA to say, if you want to use maintenance money, how much? Send $30 million to CDOT? They apparently could use it. They have plenty of projects on Powers Extension, Powers Widening, interchanges, to Highway 24 West, Highway 24 East. We have, and Craig can correct me, we have over $1 billion on state highways right now that are cleared that can use money to go forward under design build, like Cimarron, I-25 widening, which is done, anything else on any of these corridors. So $30 million is a drop in the bucket. So if maintenance money can go to CDOT for either maintenance on their state highways or a capital project, we need to hear from PPRTA board.
So PPRTA is still going to go through the process. They're going to have their meeting, and they're going to come back, and let's say they make a decision to do this funding.
Yeah.
Then what action we have just heard a motion on would, and assuming we vote positively on the motion, then there would be an administrative sit-down, and the PPRTA money would be substituted for what we're saying right here?
Really close. Under the memorandum of agreement we have with the state, Federal Highways, Federal Transit, and PPACG and CDOT, we can administratively shift money this way. So the staff recommendation allows us to replace the federal STP Metro money with local money, PPRTA money. And we can do that overnight, and it's done by email because we have that agreement. We're just replacing money. But because if it's federal money, if you're moving the federal money, you got to have a TIP amendment. Because one of the requirements of a TIP amendment is reduce money or change the federal money or whatever it is. So staff has proposed doing it this way. It covers the bases. The project gets funded. CDOT go issue your RFP. Have a great day. And if PPRTA next week says, go fund it, we'll change the money and CDOT won't miss a beat. They'll be out trying to get the project built as soon as they can.
Jan?
The only comment that I would make is that I am hoping that this particular recommendation doesn't set a precedent for two reasons. One is if the community that we live in ever felt like because the state wasn't going to fund something that was important to our community, there may be a reason to work with the PPRTA to move money to something that makes a difference in the quality of life in our community. So,
quick comment on that. PPRTA just got reauthorized for another 10 years of capital. In that capital list, A and B, $64 million of capital state highway projects. So the voters said do Powers Boulevard for like $31 million and do another $30 million of capital. The difference that PPRTA has, they're talking about maintenance dollars. So capital is on the list of voters. That's a no-brainer. The first RTA, first 10 years, we spent $84 million on state highways under capital. So capital is not a question. If it's in the budget, do a state highway through using PPRTA state money, blended. However, there's no question. There's no argument. We've done it. We've spent $84 million. But again, this is a difference that, again, it's a policy decision by that other government, and they'll make it. And then we're trying to be flexible for CDOT to say, CDOT, go build that Fillmore project, which is near the top of all the list of the PPACG board. This lets CDOT go, doesn't miss a beat. And if PPRTA says, here's $1 million, then, as Craig said, we do the TIP amendment by email with CDOT, and we're done.
okay.
Pothole money.
Jim?
Just apologies for being a newbie. Just to make sure I understand, Jim, your motion is to recommend using money that we have control over in the hopes that PPRTA will come through with $1 million
Yes.
that can be floated in and relieved again.
I wouldn't use in hopes of, but if the PPRTA CAC changes their policy to allow that to happen, then we can
Okay.
substitute the money.
And the question that I would have in conjunction with that then is there a mechanism by which, to Ellen's comment, that we can endorse the staff recommendation and communicate from our board, or recommend that our board communicate to the PPRTA the staff part of this, where the money might come from? I mean, how does PPRTA make that decision? Are they doing it based upon Appendix D and what's already?
Well, as we've heard, it's already.
Well, it's budgeted.
Yeah.
But they have to make a decision.
But I think we're doing what the staff has recommended that we do.
Okay.
It was the TAC, Jim, that was taking a different approach by counting on the RTA changing its policy to allow that to happen.
Okay.
That was a TAC recommendation.
It seems to me this is much cleaner. I feel good about it personally.
Can we get a restatement of the proposal to vote on? I'm sorry, because
I recommend that our recommendation to the board would be that we take $1.3 million of Metro funds and the $700,000 of CDOT funds to fully fund the Fillmore interchange.
Is that what you had, Jacqueline? Okay.
Essentially the staff recommendation.
Yeah.
We approve the staff recommendation.
Are we ready? Oh, Elizabeth.
Okay, I'm still confused. I'm not as new as Jim, but I'm still pretty new here. So I think I understand what the motion is. Can someone explain to me what the alternative motion is?
Well, that, it would be using some sort of suasion to tell PPRTA
How to
do
spend
it,
their money.
how to spend its money.
Okay, so then the
feel
motion is to not count on the PPRTA money?
Correct. It's a wink.
Okay, then maybe I'm not understanding well.
We
Okay.
are really, we are counting on that, but our motion says we're going to do it this way, but we've got a PPRTA person here saying it's in the budget.
May I restate? If we, in my opinion, if we approve a motion that assumes the RTA is going to make a policy change and they don't do it, we're still short 1.3 million bucks.
Yes.
And we got to come back and find a source and do another amendment to find the money. If they do change it, it's an administrative process to make it go, and we're still fully funded. No? Oh, okay.
Because the $1 million is still there in Metro. So.
Oh, true.
So you don't have to go find it. The $1 million is there.
You've got to do another tip amendment to take the.
You'd have to do another tip amendment. It's just a matter of another month round.
Okay.
But what this approach does is it doesn't address the Powers Airport Stewart congested intersection, whereas the other proposal does. And it sounds to me like there's an assumption that the board hasn't approved the $1 million. The PPRTA board hasn't approved the $1 million for the Fillmore interchange, but by them approving the 2014 budget, which does have this as a line item, in our minds they did, because when we, as staff who looks at the PPRTA board and project list, we go out and we start implementing the projects that are within that budget, be it the Fillmore Diamond, be it on-street bike lanes or any other capital projects, maintenance or capital project. We use that to give us guidance on which projects to implement.
So if we take the action that we have a motion for, what are you going to then report to PPRTA?
Well, it'll be really PPRTA staff that reports, the actions of this committee. But what doesn't happen is there's no project at the Powers Stewart Airport interchange, because now we have $2.5 million sitting out there not being targeted for any other project. And it was mentioned the 8th Street interchange is the next priority. Well, you can't get it with $2.5 million.
Craig?
We can't put the money on Powers in any case because it hasn't been through a competitive selection process. So it can't go to Powers. And even if it could go to a project that didn't, the board's current stated priority is still 8th Street.
Well,
So
I'd like to, Tim, I understand what you're saying. I think the assumption that just because it was listed in the RTA budget as a maintenance funding, I don't think the CAC, the RTA CAC, and the board would assume that that money was going to go to a capital project because of the category of funds that it was in. Now, having looked at that appendix and the wording, I would wonder why somebody's programming a couple $1 million for maintenance of an interchange, a new interchange that doesn't exist. It could certainly use $1 million worth of maintenance funding, and maybe that's what it was intended to be used for. But now that the project has risen in priority with the state and now funded on the capital list, I think it's a leap of faith to say that just because we had programmed $1 million in maintenance for that project, that we can now move it onto the capital side when there's millions and millions of dollars of maintenance funding that's going to take place that needs to be done in the RTA area. I think that's a leap of faith personally, but I understand your point.
Larry?
Tim, say again where you're from?
I'm actually with the City of Colorado Springs,
Okay.
traffic engineering.
But you're chair of the TAC, right? No.
No.
That's right.
He's a member of the TAC.
Member of the TAC.
So if, Tim, you said the PBRTA already has said that they'll spend $1 million, and that's where the TAC is coming from, saying that they've already allocated that amount of money, and so that's what TAC's recommending. I
Right.
guess, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, our concern is we don't want to tell another government what to do with their money, and
Well, we
is that...
can't. We can try, but
But is it, since they already have it in their budget, is it just, should we just wait and see what PPRTA decides to do before we vote on this?
And that's what our amendment would do, was
Right.
if they make this change, then we can make those shifts around, and Metro now becomes, RTA money, replaces a Metro money. So, that's kind of what we're doing, is that we're, in my opinion, the purpose of my proposal was to make sure that we get that interchange fully funded while it's still a priority and while the state and everybody else has made an effort to get it done. And if RTA funding becomes available, then great.
there's a number of people in this room who have heard all of this discussion, and what we are hoping and counting on would be that funding coming through to replace the $1 million that we're talking about here. So I guess we've got a question on the floor.
Call the question.
Move the question.
Harold, you have your,
I have a motion that we now vote.
okay.
Let's see if
I'm
we can
hearing you.
clarify this through that process.
So does anybody want the motion repeated, or everybody understands what we're voting on, correct?
Just repeat the motion.
The motion is that we accept the staff recommendation of taking $1.3 million of Metro money and $700,000 of CDOT to completely fund the $2 million, completely fund the shortfall on the Fillmore interchange.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay.
And I'll abstain.
Abstentions? Jacqueline, do you have the abstentions?
2.
Okay, 2.
Oh.
3?
Bob, I just have, and I don't know if anybody else felt this, and that's why I didn't vote, but one of my biggest concerns is that there's something we're not, I feel like there's something we're not hearing.
So is there 4 abstentions?
Are you?
3.
Are you
4.
abstaining?
4.
Just clarifying, I only saw 3.
We still have a quorum then that has voted for it, right? Rob, any answer to what Jen posed? Is there anything we aren't hearing?
Brian was going to answer. Yeah, if you, maybe more detail of what you think is missing.
I'd be happy to ask those questions.
But we try to boil it down that, PPRTA will make its decision. Regardless of that, your TIP amendment that you just passed can go forward, CDOT can go forward, once our board approves it on May 14th. If the money changes, PPRTA money can replace the federal money, STP Metro, by $1 million, if they agree to do that. But I don't know if they're going to do that or not.
Yeah.
That's completely their decision. So what you did today, let CDOT go forward, doesn't miss any beat. And so it's just, the unknown is what PPRTA is going to do with the new policy.
Jason called it an elephant in the room. It could be Pandora's box. It's...
Well, as I said, it could be upwards of $30 million that the PPRTA has in maintenance. The secondary question for the PPRTA, policy-wise, is that $30 million eligible to be put on the state highway system, capital or maintenance? Let's go repave Powers Boulevard for $30 million. So that's the precedent setting, and that's why the board, PPRTA board, needs to weigh in. Because right now it's $1 million in their budget, but you all know government finance. Even though it's in the budget, to come out of that budget, there needs to be a contract, intergovernmental agreement, and there is a draft one that city and CDOT have to put the city on the hook for the $1 million, not the PPRTA. It's a two-party intergovernmental agreement to use PPRTA money. So that agreement would be the mechanism to get it from PPRTA budget out to whoever CDOT hired, or is it a payment back to the city? Is it a payment to CDOT? Nobody knows yet. But before they do that action, they're going to have a policy discussion, first at their citizen committee, then at the board. Do we allow PPRTA maintenance dollars to go to CDOT for any purpose, or maintenance, or whatever? So that's the unknown, and it's hard to describe to this group because you don't make a recommendation to PPRTA. But you have a conditional recommendation that the Transportation Committee made saying, let's use $1 million of PPRTA maintenance money because it's in the budget. Okay? That's their recommendation. And you have yours. And so hopefully, I mean, there's nothing hidden. It's just there's two options to fund this. What you did, and staff agrees, it gives the flexibility to change the money. But the good news, the next board priority is going to be completely funded. That's the great news. CDOT go, and then the board, through your advice and the tax advice, eventually will say, what's the next regional priority? If we have 10 million, 20 million, or 2 million, do we do final design on 8th Street for 10 million? Or do we widen Powers for 10 million? Or do we do final design of Powers North extension? So all those projects on the list that the PPACG board has, they've got to revisit that. Because if you notice, we're starting to knock off some of those.
Yeah, after what, 30 years, I think they said at the last, what the thing was, they've been our number priority for
Right.
that long?
That list isn't too old, but we knew things were getting teed up and lined up. So once we get Cimarron done, we're going to get Fillmore done. You can see on that bulleted list, I-25 widening, check. So as we go down that, soon the board's going to be left with, now what? But what we don't know yet, and CDOT hasn't given us, what's the resource allocation? And you talked about one category, RPP, Regional Priority Program. That number is from 0 to $34 million right now. So somewhere in there, there's an amount coming to the region, PPACG, for use on something. We don't know what that something is yet, and we'll have to ask you all and then eventually the board to say what's next.
Since we have voted to use the STP
Metro
Fund,
Federal dollars, yes.
does that give PPRTA less incentive to give us the $1 million? Will they say it's already funded, now we're not going to worry about funding it? So is that a possibility? Because then now we've taken $1 million from the Metro Fund that can't be used in other projects that we could. When it sounds like PPRTA pretty much, other than really paperwork, and they're saying we want to give this to you, but if you already have the money, then we don't feel motivated to give you this $1 million. I mean, I guess that's what I feel like maybe
Sure.
I was missing on that information.
Yeah, a couple things. Would it relieve the PPRTA board members knowing your PPACG board, if they say, we're taking the CAC recommendation, we're going to fund it this way, then that $1 million is not needed anymore in their budget. However, we're still going to ask them for the policy statement.
Right.
Because part of some of the City of Colorado Springs recommendation is, and they wrote this down, and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, but they said if we don't use the $1 million on Fillmore, we may use the $1 million of PPRTA maintenance money on Powers Boulevard. So the policy statement needs to be defined, because we have never used PPRTA maintenance dollars on a state highway, never, in the first 9 years. And I write the checks, I approve the invoices. We looked, it's not there. Capital, yes. Maintenance, never. So they need the policy statement regardless. Just because it's in the budget, there's a lot in the $143 million budget. It's not automatically, as they said, given. So, but it does relieve the pressure of the PPRTA board members, which mostly sit on the PPACG board. So they may have an audible sigh of relief on the May 14th meeting, but
I just hate for us to kind of lose out on $1 million that we could have had by making this vote already today, and that's why I was kind of thinking maybe we should hold off on making this any recommendation until we find out what PPRTA, if they really are going to write this.
Right. Well, Tim said it from Colorado Springs. The $1 million just get reprogrammed. If you're following, I mean, Pikes Peak RTA has over $90 million in the bank waiting for projects to catch up to it. I mean, our auditors upstairs are auditing the books going, you have how much cash? Because it sits in the PPRTA bank account. We don't give it to city, county, towns. So that $1 million in the budget, like the other $142 million in the budget, they come forward with a contract to get it out of the budget.
Okay, I apologize for wasting
Well,
your
it's
time.
okay.
I know we've already voted on it, so I
it's not
think my
wasting.
questions have been answered.
But it's answering the question. I mean, there's nothing underhanded, sneaky behind the scenes. As I said, from PPACG, we're so glad this will be funded. It's a color of money. Frankly, we don't care. We like the flexibility. And as I said before, the board, PPACG has used state and federal money to fund the shortfall on widening I-25 and the Cimarron interchange. This is just another example of using federal money to match state money and not use local money. Because remember, the other precedent is if the state wanted local money, they may want to ask City of Colorado Springs out of their general fund, the county out of its road and bridge fund. CDOT doesn't care where the local money comes from. So that would be a different discussion as well.
Well, we're recommending to, and the board is making the
Yeah,
decisions.
they'll wrestle with that.
Yeah.
But I'd be happy, and I'll be around for a bit if you want to talk about it.
Thanks, Rob. Okay. Brian?
Yes. Good afternoon. Brian Vituli with PPACG's Transportation Program. We're asking for your recommendation of Amendment 17 to the 2013-2018 Transportation Improvement Program. I'm passing out another handout. This is attachment 5 for this item. This is our draft tip table. It was accidentally left out of the packet. The request comes from CDOT, and it entails two changes to the tip. The first one is to add a new maintenance and operations project, and the second is to add funds to an existing ramp project. It's the Responsible Acceleration of Maintenance and Partnerships project. So the first item is adding a new surface treatment of State Highway 85 project, and that's from milepost 128 to 138, for a total of $4,740,000. And this is a split between federal and state funds. The second item is to add a little over $8.6 million of faster safety funds between 2014 and 2015, and about $242,000 of strategic highway funds for 2014. And this is for the State Highway 21 or Powers Boulevard Old Ranch Road interchange completion project. Now, initially, this was a partially funded through RAMP. And if you look at the tip table that I just passed around, it was a $600,000 was the RAMP award for State Highway 21 Old Ranch Road. And with these additional dollars, that'll bring the project total up to $9.4 million. So you can see the details in attachments 1 and 2 for the surface treatment project, and attachments 3 and 4 provide some details for the State Highway 21 Old Ranch Road interchange project. And that attachment 5 that I just passed around is the tip table that we're asking you to consider and recommend as Amendment 17. Are there any questions?
Brian, I have one. I'll borrow a line from Jim, being the new guy. What's a surface treatment?
It's basically a maintenance project. It's a surface overlay of that stretch of State Highway 85.
And where is that exactly, or what is that, State Highway 85, between those mile markers? I tried to find that, and I
believe it's from the Fountain area up to South Academy, B Street, and that area.
And is that I-25?
No, State Highway 85.
It's state, it is state
Yeah.
highway.
83 and 89.
So, yeah, it's basically a maintenance project to overlay, make the pavement condition better.
Kind of a resurfacing?
Yes.
How many lanes does that have on it right now, all the way?
Is it 5?
Mark Andrew with CDOT. 85 has mostly 4 lanes. There's a section where it's 2 lanes. So this project would resurface from the Fountain exit, where the concrete ends, north, and I'm not sure where the north limit is, but there's a no-work zone where the pavement's in good shape. And then we pick it up again north of South Academy up to B Street where that pavement's in poor condition. And then we're going to look at maybe doing some additional rehabilitation for the Fountain Creek 85 bridge too. But yeah, to answer your question, it's some places it's 2 lanes, some places it's 4 lanes.
Mark, is that South Nevada? Is that where Nevada goes south?
No, it's 85.
No.
You know where Academy curves south?
Yeah.
From south, and then it curves west?
Yeah.
85 goes, you take that, there's an exit there where you can take to go south to Fountain.
They're going to
Goes
Security
back
and
into
Fountain.
Tucci,
I
Security.
see, oh, okay, I got it now,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
I got
essentially
it
the
now.
parallel
Yeah.
route to I-25.
Yeah, I know where it's at.
Yep.
And then I have another question.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay, before you leave, Mark, on the second item, the Old Ranch Road interchange completion project, so have you broken up, I've only barely glanced at that project that you're got 95% complete. So what is this portion that, you've broken it up into 2, is that what you've done for the Old Ranch Powers interchange?
No, in terms of 2, it's still one project. We had some utilities that we identified that were unknown until we started just doing some potholing that we didn't know about. We have to relocate those. One's an electric line, one's a gas line. Some of the utilities we knew about. So we shifted some of the money that we had in that project to cover the utility costs. And then the rest is to make up the shortfall with the $8.6 million coming from the city's PPRTA funds to bring it up to, I think it's 9.2, 9.4 million to be able to advertise that project.
Okay, I got it then.
So, yeah, it gets.
I didn't understand the
It gets, the
completion.
gap gets us there to be able to advertise that in June.
Jim?
I just have a question for either you or Brian regarding, are the nature of the projects totally, I know that is close to where I live, and I constantly hear about accidents. It's a safety, it's been a disaster between the high school and people that go from west to head to either Shriever or Peterson, so there's like major to-do in that area. Do any of these changes, or, it sounds like basic maintenance stuff, but are any of the changes being made going to affect the safety of that interchange?
And you're talking about the old ranch interchange?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be a big safety enhancement because we're going to take mainline traffic off the ramps and we're going to put it onto Powers and build a bridge. So the mainline traffic won't be utilizing the at-grade intersections at the ramps.
Because I wanted to interpret that some of these tweaks are these are just adds to get some of the underlying work completed and that the safety issue is being addressed.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see, I think, a big benefit in terms of severity and accident reduction, and then we'll address the pedestrian concerns because we'll have a fairly wide sidewalk where, the students from Pine Creek High School can cross over the bridge without going through, high-speed at-grade intersections.
Thank you.
And we're seeing completed dollars here then. I mean, we're done.
We're done. Okay. Yes.
Until the next year.
Golf clap.
We've got this project about 95% ready to go, so I think we're confident. We've just priced it recently, so I think we're confident. And same with Fillmore as well.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have a motion on the floor or not?
Move approval of tip amendment 17 as presented.
Okay.
Second?
Second, all right. Further discussion, questions?
I'd like to make
Elizabeth?
I can't address number 1 so much as number 2, but I think it's a huge improvement for Powers, and it's a huge improvement for the region in general. I wholly support this project. I've seen the designs, and I think anybody who has driven Powers understands that main line needs to be constructed. If you don't know what we're talking about right now, all you have is the exits and entrance ramps all up and down that northern corridor, or that mid-northern corridor section, not all the way, obviously, but, so people come off, hit a traffic light, and then come back on to Powers, so at these intersections. So this is like, that's why I asked my question to Mark, is what exactly, why is this money needed? And so it really sounds like it's for some utility conflict. So this is a great thing, not just for the city of Colorado Springs, which I work there, but I'm representing the city of Woodland Park here. I think it's for anybody and everybody. It's going to help us get to the airport. It's going to help people get another major corridor north-south. So I'm wholly in support of this motion that we have on the table.
Thank you. Further comments? Those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None? No abstentions, I take? Okay, thank you. All right. Brian?
Not getting too involved too quickly.
Who's your new assistant, Brian?
And thank you all again for coming to the workshop earlier on today. This item here, item 11, we're asking for your recommendation for the evaluation criteria weighting that we'll use to evaluate and score projects and ultimately come up with a fiscally constrained project list.
How many were not at the workshop? Jen, you weren't able to make it. Anybody else? Okay. As opposed to past processes, this was a wonderful experience. We've made a little sausage in this by putting together a lot of opinions, but when you look at it, it turned out pretty well for this committee as a whole. And when we compared it to the TAC, it also turned out favorable, I think. So we feel like we've done a lot of work today.
Yep, and just to recap, in case any member wasn't here at the workshop, these were the numbers that we came up with, or that you all provided us with. This is the comparison between your results and the Transportation Advisory Committee results. And as Mr. Baker said, a lot of very, very similar. In some years, these have been very, very different, but this is really closely aligned with the TAC results. And this is the way we sorted them by the weight. So you can see that the maintenance, mobility improvement, congestion reduction, safety, connectivity, they were the top four.
Those poor lizards.
Mice. Mice. The mice.
And as far as process, these, your results and the TAC results will be presented to the board at their board meeting this month, and they'll make they'll approve either the TAC results or your results, or do an averaging or tweak them themselves. So this will present both options to the board and show them the work that the committees did, and then they will have the approval power.
I don't want you or Craig to think that we now have a symbiotic relationship with the TAC.
We'd never think
but,
that.
This is as close as we'll come.
Just to be clear.
Acorn.
I'd just like to say that I appreciate you, Craig, the staff, and Rob for running that, having that session for us, facilities. I know that's extra money, but I think it was well worth it. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, a motion, please?
I move to provide a recommendation for the PPACG Board of Directors to consider at their May meeting. The board requests that both TAC and CAC provide, well, I'm reading the proposed motion, so the TAC and CAC provide combined weighted average for them to consider. So I'm so moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Right. Further discussion? Those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12, so if you don't have the new agenda in front of you, you don't have that, but we're on item 12 now.
Yep, that's fine. Okay. This item is primarily to help staff, PPACG staff out. We have to report per map 21 conditions, roadway conditions, based for the national highway system based on whether it's an urban section or a rural section. Urban and rural is determined by the Census Bureau when they draw their, maps. The Census Bureau couldn't care less about roads and where they fall on the system. So as they're doing their proposal, and this isn't going to work so well, I guess it kind of shows it. We have in our area 2 urban clusters, the Air Force Academy and Woodland Park Urban Cluster, and we also have the City of Colorado Springs urban area. Areas that aren't highlighted are outside, they're in rural. So look, just picking on US 24, you know what, I'm going to go to the other one because I think it'll show up a little better. Let's see. So US 24, this is rural, this is urban, this is rural, this is urban, urban, rural here, urban, rural, urban, and we don't want to have to track. So this stretch here is all rural. This is rural, 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 urban here, rural, rural, rural. We don't want to have to track that by milepost footage. Federal Highway Administration allows us, for planning purposes only, not for programming, to smooth our boundaries so that we can say, from here all the way to here, it's urban. From here to here is rural, and then and that accounts for the interstate too. So picking the interstate, here it's urban to here. This is all rural, all the way up. Then we get to here, here's a little stretch of urban, and this is rural, and then this is urban again, and this piece is rural. And then this is urban up to here, and this is rural.
So when you say smooth,
yeah, we're adjusting, we're creating smoother boundaries. And so let's zoom in one more. That's too small. So the proposal of this hatched area is changing the boundary to the hatched area so that everything inside the hatched area is, for our analysis, planning, and reporting purposes, urban. So that means like all of Powers up here is all urban. We include Mark Shuffle all the way down, as we go down south, Mark Shuffle east of there. This is all urban, so everything inside here is also Powers south is urban. And just creating smoother boundaries. So this, and here's Fort Carson again. All this, is urban, rural, urban here, rural, urban. We don't want to have to report that. So we'd like to just have urban and rural, in and out type boundaries. It's not going to, we get our federal money based on the census-designated urban area, so the population within the census, the shaded area there, that's what we use for programming purposes and everything else. But for our planning purposes, we can use the smooth boundary. The talking to the CAC, the only concern that was expressed was Woodland Park did not want their urban cluster joined to the Colorado Springs urban area because they're having some issues with stormwater and what level of review that they have to do for their stormwater. So we kept this section here as rural to show there's a clear divide between the larger metro urban area and the smaller Woodland Park urban cluster. Because this, and if you drive this section, it's pretty easy to argue that that's a rural section. That's not an urban section.
It's the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are there any negatives to this proposal that you should want to share?
Negatives? Not
Impacts?
really.
Intended?
Well, they're actually, for what happens then is those areas that are in the urban area, they get evaluated based on urban driving conditions. So there could be some speed limit stuff. There could be some signage. In urban areas, rural areas, you have different signage requirements for size and stuff. Everything inside the urban will use the urban for that. But like I said, the TAC, it was a unanimous recommendation of the TAC. So.
If you were a business owner in one of the areas,
It was, it was recommended. Was it unanimous or? Yeah. Okay.
Harold?
I was just going to ask a question. If in fact you're a business owner following current regulations for quote urban, and you're now included inside of one of these expanded smoothed areas?
Yep. Those are not for planning purposes. Those are for enforcement purposes.
Okay. So.
Yep. Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Could I have a motion, please?
I move we accept the staff's recommendation to smooth the boundaries of our urban planning area.
Second.
Only for planning purposes.
Yes.
For planning purposes.
For planning purposes.
Okay. And there was a second, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion, comments?
One comment. Did you ever get that little neighborhood north of County Line Road changed?
Actually, nope, we cannot change it. It is always going to be part of our urban area. However, we have an agreement now with Dr. Cog that Dr. Cog will assume the planning duties for that neighborhood. And you can see it on here. I'll just, in Douglas County, this neighborhood right here, census says this is part of our urban area, even though it's in Douglas County. And that opened a can of worms where PPACG board, if we hadn't come up with this agreement, would have had to invite Douglas County into our MPO, onto our board, and they had, and Dr. Cog, it created, so we have an agreement with Dr. Cog that they will do the planning for this portion of our urban area. We also
Is that a forever kind of agreement?
nope. Every 10 years we'll have to.
Okay.
We'll have to update it every 10 years, every time the census. We have another area down here that is actually outside of our metropolitan area, too. We're going to have to, before we adopt our next plan, we're going to have to figure out how to deal with this area here.
That's that mountain.
Is that Rancho Colorado?
Rancho?
Yeah.
It's Rancho? Yeah.
So, there's a gravel pit and a business there. So we have to adjust.
Thanks to-
So we will for sure have to adjust our MPO boundary to incorporate this. What we do beyond that, we don't know yet, but we'll go through that process before the plan is adopted, so in the next 6 to 8 months.
Those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
None. Thank you, Craig. Not smart enough to oppose. Anybody have any special items for the next CAC meeting?
Do they live in this map?
Any member announcements? Will we have Vince Rizanek on next time at our next meeting? Does he come on? I didn't notice the date.
No, the May meeting is May 28th, so technically, he would be a voting member June 1st. Yes, the June
In June.
25th meeting.
And mine's up in May as well, right?
Yes, but you are still the voting member at the May meeting.
Okay. Just something to keep in mind, with the number of new people on, I would like us to very briefly go around the table at, I think it'll be the June meeting now, and talk a little about yourself, your kind of the experience you bring to the table, what you did for a living. Us old retired guys, we just say we survived.
Been there, done that.
We go to the park every once in a while. At any rate, I'd just be kind of thinking about that, because I think that's information sharing so that everybody kind of knows what everybody did in their lives and who we are and where we came from, that kind of thing. I think I can adjourn the meeting without really having a vote on it, so thank you again for the long day that we've put in. It is appreciated, it was valuable, and come again.
Good job.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you. Look forward to seeing you.